In a world where voices are silenced,
Please.
one man refuses to lie down.
It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
He's been punted not once,
40 years they've been trying.
not twice,
You couldn't fire somebody if they were horrible, doing a terrible job.
but 3 times.
You're fired.
He doesn't tell you what to think, but gives you something to think about. Welcome to the Bonafide podcast with Luke Bona. And he's not
All right, here we go.
done
Hold your ears, folks.
yet.
It's showtime.
Well, g'day and welcome to another Bonafide podcast. Excited to tell you it's episode 125. And it's the podcast where I don't tell you what to think. I like to give you something to think about. And look, it only works if you jump in and get involved. So please let us know what you think. Send your thoughts to community@bonafidepod.com. I still have to read it. Or call and leave us a voicemail on 0291289311. And remember to follow, subscribe, share, because it helps us find new audiences everywhere. And just a reminder, you can watch this episode on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever it is you want to watch it. And you might hear a little bit of
Pretty sure
background.
it's just YouTube and Spotify.
Okay. And you might hear a little bit of background noise from the millennial because they're doing some renovation work next door, which is going to be absolutely making her day.
Oh, so happy about it.
Hello, Millie.
Hi.
How you going? You all right?
Same shit, different day.
Okay. Well, let's have a look at some different
You know,
shit.
I once accidentally, when I was working at Listener, they asked me, can you call up and, say something for something that they were doing on Triple M Breakfast or something like that. They called and I was in the office at the same time and I just blanked and I said same shit, different day on air. And they're like, oh, because you're not allowed to swear on air. And I was like, oh, frick, I should know that.
I remember I was working on 2GB and Tony Abbott was in Afghanistan visiting our troops. And one of the superior officers that was showing him when he was then Prime Minister was showing him around and he was explaining how devastating war can be and the terrible choices that soldiers have to make. And Tony Abbott said, that's when shit happens. And everyone was outraged that the then Prime Minister said the word shit, but it gave everybody on 2GB an opportunity to say shit on air because they were quoting the Prime Minister. And eventually an email from the then program director came around and said, I think we've done enough of the shit, because everyone was saying shit happens because they were quoting the Prime Minister. But it was considered a very bad word on 2GB back in the day. Then I went to Triple M where it was nothing.
Speaking of fun facts, Luke, somebody left a comment on our YouTube video that we put up of your interview with Robbie Katter, I should say.
Robbie Katter, yeah, yep.
Robbie Katter. And they said that nuclear energy is fine, but they prefer thorium. Have you ever heard of thorium before?
Yes, I'm going to need re-education.
I had never heard of this before, so I went down a rabbit hole. So thorium is essentially like uranium. However, Luke, it is 3 times more abundant in the Earth's crust than uranium.
Yeah.
I'll give you the spark notes here.
Yeah.
It's safer than uranium because it doesn't have a naturally occurring chain reaction like uranium does. Thorium actually needs an extra chemical to make it, start working, essentially. It's easier to control if something goes wrong. And it's also, Luke, it's like 4 times more effective than uranium as well. You get more out of, more
bang for your buck.
More bang for your buck. However, the reactors, they use this thing called a salt molten process, right? And I think it was either somewhere between the wars, right? They were researching thorium and uranium. They say that because you can't make nuclear weapons from thorium, they decided to abandon thorium reactors and go with nuclear reactors. That's kind of like the theory.
Yes.
But we kind of abandoned thorium reactors in like the 1960s to 1970s.
Right.
I think there's one thorium reactor in China, and we've got heaps of research around thorium, but it's just not being explored. Yeah, and look, lower waste as well. It's something like 100 to 1,000 times less waste than a nuclear reactor, and it's also not as, when you take away that element that makes it active, it's not reactive anymore. So it's like way safer than
Well, why aren't we doing it?
That is exactly
Jesus.
my question.
Why aren't we doing it?
I know.
Science wasn't your major at school, was it?
Hey, I freaking love science. I did actually do biology in the HSC.
You did French too. That's got you a long way. Hey, listen, I am going to find an expert on thorium, and we will do that on a future podcast, I promise.
Thorium. I'm down for it.
Why don't we just have we at least need a discussion on it. Kelsey?
And guess what, Luke? Guess why it's called thorium?
What?
Guess why it's called thorium?
Why?
It's named after Thor.
The god of thunder.
Exactly.
Thor is the god of thunder. He's got a big hammer.
He does. That's what it's named after because it's so awesome.
Okay.
Fun fact for the day.
That is a great fun fact for the day. And if there's anyone listening that knows anything about thorium, have you worked with it? Do you contact us? We will explore thorium. Coming up, Senator Nick McKim, who is a fascinating bloke. He's from Tasmania. Does he have some interesting thoughts on Australia, where we're going and why we're going that way? I won't say too much, but we like to spread the love around. And so we're going Greens again today with Senator Nick McKim from Tasmania. And I want you to stay listening to what he has to say. Facial recognition, and Bunnings floated this idea with the argument that, it's to combat shoplifters. But no, Senator Nick McKim believes that facial recognition will be used in Coles and Woolies soon, not to try and pinpoint shoplifters, but to gain intelligence on your shopping habits.
And dynamic pricing. Do you know what that is, Luke? Do you know what they mean when they say dynamic pricing? You don't, do you?
No.
No. I'll give you an example, right? So they've already rolled this
She's an
out.
expert on retail and thorium today, folks.
I am.
We're learning a lot from Dr. Kelsey.
I know. Dr. Carr would be proud, I think.
He would.
So in the US, they've already started rolling out these digital price tags, right? So they can change within a click of a button the price of things. There was this woman in America shopping at Walmart. She saw a pair of shoes on sale and the price tag said $3. And she was like, great, looking for a kid's shoes they were. She double checked online because she wanted to make sure this was a great price. So she checked online, make sure that yes, they were in fact $3, scanned the barcode, did all the things. By the time she got up to the counter, that price had changed from $3 to $19.
Yeah.
So she went and she said, hey, this, and she took a photo of the price tag when she was there because she had heard that this might happen. And then so she walked back to the price tag, took another photo, it was $3, walked back to the register, it's $19. So she was saying essentially the price of this item is changing whilst you're in the shop. And it also, she was kind of suggesting that the price was changing based on where you were in the shop. So the price was getting more expensive when you got to the checkout. So this is dynamic pricing essentially in action.
Well, we're being manipulated, aren't we? And if the Strait of Hormuz continues to stay closed because the drama between America, Israel and Iran has escalated again, the strait is now closed again. It's going to put the price of petrol up, diesel, which is going to affect our truckies, our groceries. It's going to affect our farmers. And it's going to affect anyone who drives a motor car. I'm going to talk to Shane Oliver about that. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to talk to Shane Oliver. There was another economist that was on the news yesterday who said if an Australian aged 30 cannot afford to buy their own home right now and continues to rent because the price of housing is always going to go up, that's why it's a good investment to get into, you could be renting for the rest of your life and you'll never be able to retire. Is that true or not? Shane Oliver will talk about, he asks the question, why are Australians suffering? Why is the cost of living where it is? And what has the government not done about it? And what can they do right now to alleviate the pain? That and more with Chief Economist from AMP, Shane Oliver. That's coming up. Kelsey, our listeners are going to meet a remarkable woman, a woman that can only be described as a passionate educator, well rehearsed, a woman that has been a principal of a number of schools, has taught in remote communities in Australia, and has been a whistleblower for the teaching movement, absolutely hated and despised by trade unions and the Queensland Labor government, but continued to fight for the right of students and teachers. Her story is just breathtaking. She has witnessed stabbings in school from students. She has witnessed assaults. She has witnessed verbal abuse, verbal threats, and she has brought into the schools that she's been in charge of massive policy differences and changes. And like Bob Davis from Hard Yakka, Kelsey, she has had great success with students. Did you know, Kelsey, there was one school and she was about to start as principal. The day she was driving into the teacher's car park on her first day of school as principal, she saw a boy in senior school holding down a girl on the oval and burning her with a cigarette. She stopped the car and ran down, took the girl to the infirmary to have her examined and possibly taken to hospital. And that boy she expelled before she'd even started her working day. That day, she expelled 6 others, but they came back to school, turned their lives around, and they stay in touch with her to this day.
Wow.
This woman is amazing. You may not agree with some of her thoughts and philosophies on teaching, but we don't tell you what to think. We give you something to think about. My God, Tracey Tully is going to give us all something to think about. She is one hell of an interesting onion that we've unpeeled here on the Bonafide podcast. And I'm telling you this, we're going to get her back because she has more to say, Kelsey. Tracey Tully, extraordinary educator, passionate educator, coming up. This week we also saw the sad passing of Sam Neill, beloved actor, class act. No one has a bad word to say about this man, a passionate New Zealander. He passed away. He had a rare blood disease, a form of leukemia. We all thought he'd beaten it. Well, apparently not. And he presented to St Vincent's Hospital a short time ago. Apparently now we find out he also had pneumonia when he was admitted to hospital, and he passed away tragically. And segueing into the man cave, we're going to talk to a man. His name is Adrian Tyson, and he imports robots. You took part in this chat.
Yes.
Were you amazed at this robot?
Amazed, slightly freaked out, but excited for the future, I guess. Just a quick note on that.
And his name's Numi.
No, it's Lumi.
Oh, it's Lumi.
We kept calling him Numi. It's Lumi. Just so we don't bore the audio listeners to tears, because a lot of it is, well, a fair chunk of the chat is Lumi doing a dance and us going, oh my God, wow, over and over and over again. So I'm going to cut that bit a little bit shorter so we don't bore the audio listeners to tears. But the full Lumi chat will be on YouTube for those that do want to watch the full dance spectacular.
All right. All that and more coming up on episode 125 of the Bonafide podcast. A quick look at some of the news stories making news. England out of the World Cup, defeated by Argentina, the holders of the World Cup.
Scotland will be happy.
The kilts will be flowing. The pubs around Australia and around the world full of English soccer supporters saying, we're going to bring it on home, we're going to bring it on home. And they were 1-0 up. 1-0 up. But then Argentina came back. And, it's going to make a very, very interesting grand final, if you're into it. Grand final. Final of the FIFA World Cup. But anyway, England out. Sorry. This excise tax, call it what you will, on tobacco. Once again, it's being blamed for the tobacco wars, and I've been saying this for ages. If you have a product that's addictive, some people will give it away, but others will find another way of purchasing it. It's like any illicit drug. And the illegal tobacco stores, the wars are continuing. And it's only a matter of time until someone's killed because these people don't give a rat's ass. It's all about turf domination. And the money is going overseas, allegedly, to assist terrorism and arms dealing. The New South Wales Health Minister, Ryan Park, is raising the alarm, saying he fears for the next generation of young people hooked on nicotine. The latest from the Australian Bureau of Statistics data showed the nation consumed 40% more nicotine to the end of 2025 compared to 2017. Just let me tell you, there are other figures that show that about 80% of all tobacco consumption is bought illegally. So it's impossible to know from the sale of legitimate tobacco products whether people are giving up because they're now buying illegal products and they don't show up on the stats. The excise, Pauline Hanson has said this, other key political figures have said this, the excise has got to go and there needs to be a bigger health public awareness campaign to get people off because the tobacco wars are seriously deadly. It's absolutely quite frightening. I'd like to know what you make of all of this. Just segueing into my chat with Shane Oliver a little bit later on, the Meriton founder, or as you would say, squillionaire, Harry Triguboff, he's the Meriton founder. He's now 93. But he has delivered a really grim pronouncement about the state of not only Australia's real estate industry, but its future as a whole. And this 93-year-old property developer says there's nothing wrong with immigration, but you've got to be picky about the people we choose to come here. Dick Smith would absolutely argue, not that Dick doesn't like immigration. He says we need to cut the numbers. Of course, Harry Triguboff has an agenda. He wants to sell properties. He wants to build apartments, and they're getting taller and smaller. But we'll talk more about that with Shane Oliver. I am concerned, Kelsey. I mean, I'm really pleased that you and Nathan have bought a property, and it's only going to go up. But for people your age, 30 and maybe above, and certainly people who are under, if they can't buy, are you destined to rent, be at the mercy of a landlord that can put your rent up within 12 months at the end of your lease, and you either pay the excess or you find somewhere else, and there ain't a lot of somewhere else's to go. Have you seen the queues of people on a Saturday morning lining up for an inspection on a rental property? Kelsey, it must be absolutely heartbreaking.
I've got a question though. What's so wrong with renting? I know that
You're paying off somebody's house.
I know.
And it's dead money. It's dead money.
That is a cultural thing with Australians where we have this thing where we need to own and live in our own houses. There are countries in the world where renting is quite normal. You know, there are lots of different countries where it actually doesn't make sense to own your own home. So my question to you, Luke, is have we villainized renting too much? And maybe this is something that we need to change in the Australian psyche. Maybe it actually makes more sense for some people to rent than it does to buy.
It depends, but you're paying off somebody else's house. You're paying off somebody else's property, their investment. And I'm sorry, I'll disagree. It's always better to own because it will only go up. And then you can put a nail in a wall, you can paint, you can do what you want. It's your place. You are at the beck and call of a landlord that can put your rent up depending on demand. And while supply is down and demand is up, your rent could go up $150, $200 a week when your lease is up. 12 months is the limit in New South Wales. You cannot have your rent put up within 12 months. At the end of 12 months, your landlord, your agent could come up to you and say, sorry, Kelsey and Nathan, your rent's going up $150 a week if you want to stay here. And you could either say, yeah, we'll suck it up and do without even more, or good luck finding somewhere else. In a neighbourhood that you've become used to, that you call home, I think you're always better off owning.
On average, the share market gets between 5 to 10% return on your investment, and obviously the longer that you keep it in. So I don't know. I think there are ways to grow your money and still own your money.
There are plenty of people renting in Sydney whose rent has gone up without notice 75%.
I'm not saying that buying is wrong. What I'm saying is if you can only afford to rent, but you still want to grow your wealth and grow your money, because you still need a massive chunk of cash from the outset. So that might not be possible for some people. There are ways to grow your money without buying, if that's out of your reach. So I'm saying maybe we've stigmatized renting a little bit too much.
Maybe we have. Do you feel like a second-class citizen because you're renting?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question.
How is society how do you feel? How is society judging you? If you're a renter, please leave us your feedback, because I would be very, 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 very keen to know. I mean, Nikki, your mum and I have been guilty. We'll be walking the dog around the block and we'll see a house with towels over the balcony, grass up to here, furniture out in the lawn or whatever, and Nikki and I will look at each other and go, renters. How bad is that?
There are actually lots of properties that just sit vacant because the Airbnb has failed or XYZ, and it's owned, it's just owned, and because some people can be a little bit greedy, it just stays there vacant. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's a very interesting conversation. I think, again, nothing wrong with buying, nothing wrong with renting. And if we have priced people out of the market, maybe it's a mindset shift that us Australians need to have around renting. Is the dead money argument actually true if you're putting that money into the share market? I don't know. I would love to hear what people have to say.
Well, the offer has been there. You could put tenants in your place. If you moved in here, you've got to get out of my chair. You can't comment.
I would be spending a lot more money on therapy, I tell you that much.
Yeah, it's cheaper to stay where you are.
Yeah.
I want people to watch this. This is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. It was an arrest. It was a citizen's arrest that took place outside a northern suburbs bottle shop. So there's a thief who's stolen, allegedly, from a bottle shop and was wrestled to the ground after trying to flee in a stolen car. But he had problems with the car. Little problem with the car. Yes, it had a handbrake and he didn't know how to turn it off. Have a look at this, folks. This is unbelievable.
Putting the brakes on his own escape.
You are joking me.
It wasn't police who stopped this car thief. The handbrake
Look at
was
those marks.
enough.
Look at the marks.
Oh, my God.
All rev and no release. This getaway
What a
struggles to get
dickhead.
into gear. A trail of
That is Dickhead of the Week. I actually sent that video off to James Ward just so that he could have a smile. The other sure way that someone doesn't steal your car is make it a manual. But that is very, very good. Well done. It's always a good idea to have a dog. It's sometimes a better idea to have a few dogs. Have you seen this? It's a pack of hero dogs. There's these dogs. And there was a bloke that came from maybe a homeless guy. He's come out from under a bridge. There's these two women and they're walking these dogs. And this guy allegedly attacks the woman. She struggles free and he does a Barry Bolt or a Harold Holt. The dogs then, well, they do their thing. Have a look. Get him!
Sick him, Rex.
Sick him, Rex, exactly.
Yeah, good dogs.
Good
doggies.
dogs. How good is that? So, well done,
Man's best
doggies.
friend.
Exactly. Time for some listener mail. Scott sent us a message. Some Mad Max and other cars were at the Bronze by the Lake event at Lakeside Raceway in Queensland yesterday. The event is a fundraiser for Blue Hope and is a police and family and friends only event. Let's have a look at this.
Look at these.
Well, that's a Charger. Well, hang on. The second one with the bonnet open is a Charger, which used to be a Chrysler. Hey, Charger. That looks like it might be
It's a Ford.
Ford police car, is it? With an air dam on the bonnet. Cars are there.
Oh, look at that.
That's that is the Mad Max Black on Black Pursuit Special. And in the background there is an MFP, Main Force Patrol, General Duties car, which was also a Falcon. That yellow one that you see there, Kelsey, those cars that were used in the original Mad Max movie, they were ex-taxis.
Oh.
They were ex-cabs and they painted them and just put the spoilers on. It was on a very, very, yeah. But that's, I think, either an XB or an XA Falcon. It's a Mad Max special with the fake blower coming up through the bonnet. That's a Calais? Is it a Calais?
Oh, they're pretty.
There we go. Car expert. Kelsey, the millennial, broadcasting live from the Bathurst 1000 later this year.
Hey, I'd be great at that.
What would you say? Here they come, there they go.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Michael sent us a video. It's of Johnny Lewis seeing his tribute in Erskineville. Now, who was Johnny Lewis? Johnny Lewis was Jeff Fennick's boxing trainer and arguably one of the best boxing trainers this country has ever produced. Let's have a look. Look at him. Legend. There he is. The great Johnny Lewis. Well done.
It's easy to find the good in someone rather than the bad.
And Kelsey, you got a message from Andrew.
Andrew said, Luke, I would love to bring this topic up with the listeners. I'd appreciate others' feedback and what they think, and obviously yourself and Kelsey regarding speaking English in the workplace. Do we have to introduce some kind of law that it be mandatory we speak the language of the country we migrate to, not only as a sign of respect and common courtesy, but to assimilate? I believe it's also a safety issue. As soon as I mention this or bring it up, everyone goes quiet because they don't want to be labelled a racist. I struggle to see how so, and surely it's not much to ask that companies start to enforce this. I know that everyone is so bloody afraid of the race card being pulled out, it is becoming a joke. What people do at home or in their own circle outside is their business. But is it fair to say that when in the workplace, speaking to work colleagues should be spoken in English? I have no problem with people coming here and going out working to earn a wage and build a better life. But for goodness sakes, have a little bit of respect. Thanks, guys. Love the podcast as always.
I think if you're working, for example, in hospitality, you might be from all sorts of backgrounds, but if you can't speak English, you're not going to get many tips. We are an English-speaking country. English is our number one language. Should it be mandatory that English is taught in schools? Is Australia's first language? Encourage a second language or a third language. I'm so envious of people who are bilingual, but should it be mandatory to speak English in the workplace? Jeepers.
If you do work in, a business that works with machinery, you know, if you're a truckie, where there is risk when it comes to communication, then I think it is fair to say that, you know, when you're discussing workplace topics or, you know, policies, then...
But what about if you go into a business? There's a great clip I want you to play here, Kelsey. It's Frank Costanza. It's Seinfeld again, Kelsey. George Costanza's dad. Elaine believes that the Korean girls that work in her nail salon are talking about her behind her back in Korean. Well, Frank Costanza, who's played by the wonderful Jerry Stiller, Ben Stiller's dad, he was in Korea and he speaks Korean fluently. So he goes in as her muse to interpret what they're saying. This is the funniest thing. And he catches them out. Have a look.
Okay, that's it. What? Where's my tail? I heard every word you said.
So, should it be illegal to speak another language if you're talking about somebody behind their back in the workplace?
Maybe not illegal, but
frowned
perhaps...
upon. What if they're talking shit about you in the nail salon in Korean?
Learn alibi and then you can speak shit too.
Bring in a spy. Coming up, Shane Adam Bassett as we remember the late, great class act, Sam Neill. Well, it's really, really sad that today, which is usually a happy time when we talk to our movie entertainment expert, Shane Adam Bassett, it's sad today because this week we saw the passing of a loved and respected actor, New Zealander Sam Neill. Yes, he was a New Zealander, in fact, a very, very proud New Zealander. Chose to stay living in New Zealand, but we claim him, like we do Russell Crowe and everything else good out of New Zealand, like Split Ends and Dragon. But when Sam Neill passed, this message came from the family on Instagram. It said, "It is with immense sadness that we, the family of Sam Neill, share the news of his passing Monday the 13th of July in Sydney, Australia. Sam was surrounded by his family and passed with the dignity that has characterised his whole life." And everyone you talk to who knew or had even just met Sam Neill said he was a class act, he was a wonderful actor, he was humble, and he was giving and sharing and was just a marvellous human being. I only had the pleasure of meeting Sam Neill once. I interviewed him once on the phone, met him once in person. And it was in 1979 when I was a panel operator at 2GB. I was 16. I hadn't turned 17 yet. And a regular on the afternoon show that I panelled with Bill Dowsett was David Stratton, who was then the director of the Sydney Film Festival. And into the studio comes Judy Davis and Sam Neill and Wendy Hughes from memory, because my brilliant career was featuring at that particular year, 1979 Sydney Film Festival. So I met Sam Neill when I was very young. I had no idea of the immense amount of work that he was going to star in and what an actor he was going to become. So look, someone who knows more about Sam Neill than I ever will is Shane Adam Bassett. Welcome back to the Bonafide podcast, mate. Sad that we have to talk about this today, but what a class act, eh?
Yeah, hi Luke, hi everyone. Totally. I've been talking about his passing on TV and radio last day or so, and I had the chance, like you, to meet him. I did it more than once, though, and in the end, he'd recognize me and nod his head, and then if he wasn't talking to people around me, he'd still come over and chat. But 1979 was interesting you say that, because that is when it really launched his career. Massive. My brilliant career in 1979 was something that sent him off into the stratosphere, basically, and never looked back. But he was humble. He was also genuine. And I found over the times talking with him, and one time I actually sat down with him in a pub at the Rocks in Sydney, which I thought was pretty cool.
It wasn't the Orient, was it?
It wasn't the Orient. I know the Orient. No, it was up. Okay. I can't remember the name of it.
Doesn't matter.
I'll tell this quick story because it was with him and Michael Caton, and we were sitting in this room, and I was allocated about 40 odd minutes or something to have a really long, deep conversation with him. And it was about the second time he'd met, so he'd recognized me anyway. Spoke to Michael Caton too, and we're having a great chat. And in the middle of this conversation, a group walked in because it was a heritage listed pub. And if you know the Rocks, it is all a lot of old buildings and things. And there was this small group, a tour group led by a tour guide that just walked in. We're in this sort of function room in a way. Sam stood up, a bit surprised. They didn't really know who he was at first. Then it clicked. He went and said hello and then sat back down, and the interview carried on when they walked out. So it was really quite funny moment. But he'd reversed. Now, I found the last couple of times that I interviewed him was on a carpet. He'd reverse the questions. So he would openly answer anything I asked him and, about movies and whatever it was we're talking about at the time, the Sydney Film Festival, whatever it might be. But then he'd ask me about my opinion on a certain movie or the movie industry once. He asked me about the film industry. I'll never forget that because it was all kind of off the record a little bit too, but he would still just continue to ask you questions and he'd be interested. So very humble, talent, just out of this world. He'd look at the directors and the actors and the people that worked with him, and he'd always love and talk about his wineries and his
he loved his wine.
And his animals too, which were his friends. All those little video clips that he'd put online. But as you know, he was very much into sustainable farming and things like that. So he loved the environment as much as he loved Hollywood in his own way, because he did sort of get out of Hollywood for a while and make a lot more Australian and New Zealand films towards the end of his career.
I guess most people would recognise Sam Neill immediately from Jurassic Park and the Jurassic Park franchise. But there was a lot more to Sam Neill than Jurassic Park.
Well, Dead Calm always comes to mind for me.
Oh, how good was that?
Yeah. And The Piano, which was a really significant film, a New Zealand film. He was handpicked by Robert Redford to be in The Horse Whisperer. With a young Scarlett Johansson. He was in that movie too. And of course, Possession, which is now a cult horror film, which he found awkward to do apparently behind the scenes, some certain moments of it, but it is now a bona fide classic film. And Robbery Under Arms, he did a version of the Jungle Book as well, and The Hunt for Red October. When people ask me my favorite movie of Sam Neill, it's always the top 2 or 3 is The Hunt for Red October.
Yeah, a Russian submarine being captained by a Scotsman.
Sean Connery, and Tim Curry was in that, and I mean the casting was amazing. So many other movies.
How did Sean Connery
Ride Like a Girl as well as another one, great film.
Oh, I love that movie. Yes, yeah. So Sam Neill had been sick. He had a blood disease. We all thought that he'd beaten it. I read in today's papers that when he was admitted to hospital in Sydney, he actually had pneumonia as well.
Oh, see, at this point of talking to you, I didn't know that anything had been confirmed, because the last that we all heard was that he'd beaten the cancer and was very happy and it was great. We were having our Sam Neill back again. So it was all sudden for me. I mean, I was driving to a movie, of all things, going to see The Odyssey. I heard it in the car and, I quite literally had to talk out loud to myself, what? And I couldn't rewind it in the car to re-listen to the news. But it was quite shocking. And look at the tributes that have come across from different actors that he's worked with. He gained connections with people. Jeff Goldblum and Laura Dern, particularly, the Jurassic Park link there, they were constantly talking about him and doing little musical video clips with him and so forth. So, but not just those two, so many others loved him. Everyone didn't have a bad word to say about him. And he'd do these little films, or he'd walk on as a cameo in a movie to help young filmmakers and things too. He wasn't just subjected to these big blockbuster films. Hunt for the Wilder People is another one I'd recommend that he was in.
Yeah. And we're talking on the podcast today about, for another reason, the movie he made with Robin Williams, Bicentennial Man.
I remember that film. I've got to say I wasn't a huge fan. I don't know. I believe there are people that like that movie, but I do remember it well. Yeah, not the biggest fan of Bicentennial Man. Maybe I need to revisit it because it's around 30-odd years old now.
Yeah, well, he will be missed. He is missed. He has a wonderful family that hold him in such high regard. Let's hope that that we can produce, the world can produce more Sam Neills, a gentleman, a talent, and a dead set talent, and somebody who loved to give and share.
I mean, over the years of my career, and I don't take it for granted, and you wouldn't too. You meet these people, and you just treat them like everybody else. And I know he appreciated that because he was one for the people. I never saw him deny an autograph or a photograph. He'd always be smiling. And like I said, personal experiences with him at different times over the years, and spending not like personal time with him, but just time, professional time with him, and him asking me questions, and his interest in me. That's pretty huge. That's good.
That's massive. So some sad news this week. We've lost Sam Neill way too early. Now, shall we move on to other things? There was a report recently that found that young Australians aged 18 to 22 are going back to the movies. And we discussed this on my segment on Channel 7 last week. And so I thought, really? Are they? Well, the figures are there. And young Australians are heading back to the big screen, which is good for the theatres that have been suffering. One of my favourite cinemas, a chain, has gone into receivership. And I'll go into that maybe a little bit later.
Oh, no. Yeah, I'm interested to hear that because there's a few around Australia that's the same things happened. Even up on the Central Coast, there was a cinema that had to close recently.
The figures show that young Australians are heading back to the big screen. And so I asked a couple of the young people at Channel 7, one young lady who's 22.
Yep.
I said, what's the last movie you went to, maybe as a group of friends, a girls' night out or whatever? And she said, Devil Wears Prada 2. We all went to that. I said, and are you going more to the movies? She said, no. That's the only one that we thought we all get together, have a couple of cocktails, go and see that and go and have some dinner and make a night of it. But she said, but we can't afford to go to the movies once a week. She said that was a one-off, but the figures are out. The cinemas may be showing movies that people want to experience on that big screen.
Yeah, they are going back to the movies, the younger demographic, but only to certain movies. It's not everything. Jackass, as an example, just came out. Now, why they thought they could make another Jackass movie for a start, and it was relevant, and they thought maybe the young kids had come back. Well, the Gen Zs or whoever were around at the time when Jackass was a thing 20 plus years ago weren't going to go and watch it. 50-year-olds in a shopping cart going down, the street. So that flopped. Then you got Moana, a remake, which is a beloved movie by younger people. It's only 10 years old. That flopped because it was a remake of exactly the same movie. Disclosure Day, and there's these other movies, Supergirl, the superhero thing. They're thinking the kids will love that. It's a female-driven superhero. Just didn't happen. If the movie was good, sure, but the movie wasn't good. I don't know why Spielberg's movie flopped. I enjoyed it personally. I don't think a lot of people did, but still. The young audiences are coming back to movies such as Obsession and Backrooms. There's a Spider-Man movie coming out that appeals to them a lot more because of Zendaya and the young casts that are involved. But just focusing on Obsession and Backrooms, they're two movies no one really took any notice of. They were from small independent film distributors. They've come out without a big lot of fanfare, but the kids knew them from YouTube. And they knew them because these directors are people that put their stuff on TikTok and YouTube. So that is why these certain films are getting audiences, because that's where the kids see them. They're watching a lot of movies that they don't even know what they are because they're just watching clips from them. And then they'll go research it because they've watched a 1 minute, 2 minute TikTok clip. And they're encouraged to put their reactions on TikTok. So it all snowballs. But Obsession is a terrific movie. Backrooms is a terrific movie.
All right, we're going to get into Obsession. We're going to get into that in just a second. I've just pulled up the cinema down the road, United Cinemas. I'm going to tell you what's on today in their times. Okay, I've just pulled it up on the internet. 4:40 this afternoon, 7 o'clock, 8:55, 8:55. So it's in two cinemas. Evil Dead Burn, Moana, live action, 10 o'clock, 11:45, 12:30. Jackass, best and last, 5:10, 7:30, 9:30. Minions and Monsters, 9:45, 10:45. It goes right through until 6 o'clock tonight. Supergirl, Toy Story 5 is on. Disclosure Day is on. Only one sitting, 8:15. And then Obsession One session, 9:30 tonight. So I'm just saying that's what's on at my local cinema today. So let's talk about The Odyssey. Now, I feel like I've seen this. My dad used to read me Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey when I was a kid. My dad loved ancient history.
Is that right? Wow, that would be an interesting thing to hear as a kid.
100%. And then we all saw Troy, the movie,
Yep.
which had Eric Bana in it, incidentally.
Yeah, Brad Pitt, Eric Bana, Peter O'Toole was in that. One of my favorites.
Peter O'Toole, yeah. But The Odyssey, epic movie, and Sunrise featured that every day last week with David Woywood, who went over and did interviews with the stars. So Shane Adam Bassett, take us through it.
Well, I'm going to be spoiler free, of course, and I haven't read the Iliad. I mean, I'm aware of the Odyssey. I know parts of it, but I really do like Greek mythology, and that's what this is. And it's an accessible movie. So a lot of the previous movies directed by Christopher Nolan, besides Batman, I guess his Batman trilogy, but say Oppenheimer, not everyone liked Oppenheimer. It was a bit much, and in their eyes. But this is his follow-up to the Oscar, winning Oppenheimer. The Odyssey starts bombastic. It starts with a bang and doesn't let up. It's basically Matt Damon's journey, and his son, played by Tom Holland, actually, who's Spider-Man, currently Spider-Man. It has got a cast of thousands. It is epic in every single way imaginable. It's almost 3 hours long, Luke. But not only me, I was talking to someone else after the movie, a couple of people actually, and it just went quick. You didn't know it was almost 3 hours. It didn't drag. There are a lot of special effects and things happening in this, because you come across a cyclops, you come across sirens, you come across different mythological things.
So
yeah, it's a tough one to say this time of the day. And also Anne Hathaway, I want to really point out that she's amazing. Robert Pattinson, the acting is fantastic. It has a few little unintentional kind of laughs in it. I did notice some of the audience were taking it a little bit less seriously than I think that it was conveying on the screen, but that was just from what I noticed in the audience, which was packed. But overall, it is a movie that people need to see and was made for the big screen.
For the big screen, yeah.
Exactly. So I don't want to give anything away, but I really liked it. It's a thumbs up from me. And you want to know out of 5 stars?
Yeah, I was about to ask, yep.
You know what? It's borderline 4 to 4.5 stars. So I'm going to give it a 4 stars, but I am going to see it a second time. So it could go up.
The Odyssey, 4 to 4.5 stars. Now, this is one that interests me. It's a comedy drama, but controversial. It's called The Invite. I've heard you say, or maybe I read something you wrote recently, that you said this film is funny, but it's going to make you feel possibly uncomfortable. Explain.
Awkward. It's an awkward movie. You probably did hear me say it, because I was referring to when I was watching it, I was okay, but there was some things happening in the movie, and I was looking around, and there's people looking at each other as it went. There was a few particular dicey scenes in it, but it was all relevant to the story. It is about 2 couples, and they live sort of, one's above the apartment, one's below, and one invites the other couple to dinner. And they don't know them that well. One couple have been arguing a lot. Their marriage is a little bit on the rocks. And the other couple are very open about their relationship. So a lot of sexual things are going to be eyebrow raising in this. Not pornographic at all. It's just very dicey, tightrope, suggestive. But you've got people in it like, now, Seth Rogen, not everyone likes, but he's more serious in this than funny. It's dramatic, but it has some comedy elements, but it's quite dramatic, particularly if you're in a relationship yourself, and you might start seeing things in it that you relate to. That's what I've been told anyway. Penelope Cruz is one of my favorites. She's in it. Edward Norton and Olivia Wilde, who you might not know, straight off who she is, but you'll recognize her. She's also directed previous movies, Booksmart and Don't Worry, Darling, which was a bit like the Stepford Wives. If you haven't seen Don't Worry, Darling, I recommend it. But she's written and directed this, or co-wrote it, directed it, stars in it. A great movie, very funny, but dark and suggestive is probably the light way of the outcome of it all. Great movie. I really enjoyed it. It's another 4 stars, and one of the best comedies I've seen in a while. Although, when you're laughing, sometimes you're a bit nervous laughing. Put it that way.
Okay.
Luke. Yeah.
It's a bit like when you laugh at Ricky Gervais. I shouldn't be laughing at that, but it's funny. One of the best movies I've ever seen with the best twist was Primal Fear with Ed Norton. That was amazing, wasn't it?
I could be wrong, but I think that was his first movie. I think that was his debut. And yeah,
he was nominated for an Oscar.
Yes. I love Edward Norton. I think that twist, which we don't want to give away, was you do not see it coming. Well, I didn't anyway.
No, I didn't see it coming. And it was just one of the best movies ever. Richard Gere.
Do you like Richard Gere? He's sort of, I really like him. He's in a show at the moment called The Agency, which is terrific. If you've got Paramount Plus, really good spy show that he's in. But do you like Richard Gere generally? Not really.
Pretty Woman.
An Officer and a Gentleman.
Officer and a Gentleman. I'm thinking, was he Robin Hood at one? No, that was the other bloke, Kevin Costner. I used to get them mixed up. I don't mind him, but Edward Norton in Primal Fear was outstanding, unbelievable. If you can go find it, folks, go watch Primal Fear again and just watch it. You won't believe the ending.
He was really good as the lawyer, just quickly too, in The People versus Larry Flint.
That's right, he was. Yes, he was.
True story.
Woody Harrelson from memory.
Yeah, and Courtney Love from Hole.
And the Courtney Love. Yeah, God, that was an amazing movie. Oh, we're going sideways. We're going bing bong, as my daughter would say.
That's I just love talking about movies. I won't stop.
Hey, listen, I want to talk about Cape Fear. Now, this is a television series, but it's a series of a classic movie. Take us through this.
Cape Fear originated as a book, apparently. Then it was a movie in the 60s with Gregory Peck and Robert Mitchum, Martin Balsam. Then Martin Scorsese remade it in 1991 with Nick Nolte, Robert De Niro, Jessica Lange, Juliette Lewis's first movie. And now here we are 30-odd years later or whatever it is as a TV show, and Max Cady is the center of attention here. He's a guy who's been in prison. Max Cady's the character. Here he's played by Javier Bardem. He's got big shoes to fill because Robert Mitchum played him in the original film. Robert De Niro played him in the remake, and he was a pretty nasty character. So Javier Bardem plays Max Cady. He's out of jail now. He says he's innocent. He didn't do what he was said to have done, and he's going to take revenge on the two lawyers, the DA and the lawyer that put him in, and he'll stop at nothing to ruin their lives. But he does it within the law because when he's in jail, he learns everything he can about the law and what he can do without getting in trouble. So it makes for a really intense show. It's drawn out into the 8 episodes. I think 10 episodes, actually. It could be even.
May as well milk it. Yep.
It's drawn out, but I still recommend it. And it has kind of references to the previous movies, but it's its own thing. Because it's so many episodes, they have to change the story up a bit and make it a little bit, more pressured and modernized. So, yeah, highly recommend it. Cape Fear. Bit gruesome, though, so not for the faint-hearted. Apple TV actually has some great shows. If you have Apple TV, I suggest maybe check them out. They've got some good shows at the moment.
Okay, now the Emmy nominations have been announced, and Australian Sarah Snook is up for Best Actress. Tell us about this.
The Emmy Awards, I love my award ceremonies, Luke. Emmys are the Academy Awards for television, so it's all television shows or television movies. All Her Fault was a television series, a limited series about a missing child. And Sarah Snook, the Australian actress, it was filmed in Australia as well, actually, in Victoria, had an international cast, but she's amazing. She's the mum of the missing child. So it's a limited series, highly recommended, and she deserves the nomination. She also got a Golden Globe nomination earlier in the year. But the Emmys aren't until September. But, I just thought I'd bring them up because of the Aussie link.
Okay. What's received the most nominations at the Emmys? Just
The Pit. The Pit received 25.
Don't know anything about it.
Oh, that's the medical drama. I've spoken about it before.
Nah. Have you? I don't know. Medical dramas don't interest me.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a very popular show on HBO Max, The Pit.
Okay.
Noah Wiley. Very similar to ER in many ways.
Okay, yeah.
And every episode is 1 hour of a shift in the emergency room. So it's pretty good. Hacks. is also been nominated for like 24 awards. That's monumental because Hacks is in its final season. It's a comedy. I don't know. Do you know Hacks at all? Okay.
I'm ignorant.
Well, third time lucky, maybe. The other biggest nominee is Widow's Bay. I know I spoke to you about Widow's Bay maybe a couple of episodes ago. It was another Apple TV series about an island who need some tourism, and the mayor decides to get some tourism people come in, but the island's cursed and doesn't really let anyone leave. So it's got a history.
Sounds a bit Stephen King.
Yes.
All right. There you go. The Emmy nominations. Australia's in there with Sarah Snook up for Best Actress in All Her Fault. Now, we're going to go back to your ratings. You had The Odyssey, 4 to 4.5 stars. The Invite?
Yes. Another 4. I loved it. 4 stars. But just be warned, it's going to offend people. The Invite might offend you.
Before I let you go, what's the next big blockbuster on your radar?
Look, I'm not a superhero guy, but it's definitely Spider-Man. I think the new Spider-Man movie is going to be pretty good. I'll go with that, I think. It's for everyone. It's not just for kids. It's for adults too. And I just know it's going to be an interesting movie.
Okay, there you go. More superheroes doing well on the big screen. Well, this time anyway. Listen, Shane Adam Bassett, thank you so much. You've been very generous with your time. Sad news about Sam Neill. And let's all go back and have a look at his catalogue of movies again, because they're all worth watching. And as I said on this podcast, we'll be talking about
definitely. And
I've
posted a few photos and tributes on my social media if anyone wants to check it out.
How do we find you?
Oh, just at movie_analyst. That's my handle. So if you look up Shane Adam Bassett or movie analyst, both you'll find me.
All right, Shane. I'll let you go. Thank you so much, sir. And have a popcorn and a choc top for me next time you're sitting in one of those red seats.
It's never too early for a popcorn or a choc tom, no matter what time of the day it is. And it is sad. We'll have to get into more about how some cinemas are closing as well or shutting down.
We will.
That's not a great thing, but maybe next time.
Let's do that. Shane Adam Bassett.
My day got the bluesy rhythm, but it's swinging my way. Oh, I got the look on a blue.
Well, as you all know, the mantra for the Bonafide podcast is I don't tell people what to think. I just love to give people something to think about. And someone who's going to give us something to think about today is a Tasmanian politician that I've been wanting to talk to for some time, Senator Nick McKim. Senator McKim was elected to the Tasmanian House of Assembly in the division of Franklin back in 2002 and was re-elected in 2006 with a huge following. He's campaigned for many, many projects, including was a key voice in support of same-sex marriage. But there are a number of other things that really fire him up. And one of them is our two big supermarkets, the duopoly and the prices Australians are paying. There's an old saying that lack of competition means lack of fair prices. And we've seen it with Qantas and Jetstar. And in fact, the federal government working very, very closely with Qantas to keep competitors out. And what's happened is their argument was, we're going to protect our national airline, but you and me and everyone else, we're paying exorbitant amounts of money for a seat on Qantas and even their poorer brother Jetstar, because other airlines have not been able to compete. And the same's going on with our supermarkets. But the bloke who knows a lot more about this is Senator Nick McKim, and he joins me now. Senator, welcome to the Bonafide podcast. And it looks like you've just come down from Mount Wellington in the middle of winter.
It's a cold, rainy, blustery winter day down in Hobart, Luke, but thanks for having me on. Great to be with you.
I went to Mount Wellington when I visited Hobart some years ago. I had an uncle who lived in Launceston, and we drove from Lonnie to Hobart. We thought we'd got to get up to Mount Wellington and have a look. My God, it would have blown the spots off a Dalmatian. And you know that little lookout with the glass windows? If it wasn't for that, we would have been blown to the Arctic. It was unbelievable.
The great thing about Kunanya, Mount Wellington, is the view down over Hobart, one of the best views of any city anywhere in the world. And then you can just turn around 180 degrees and you're looking straight over the magnificent southwest wilderness of Tasmania. Not a road in sight, not a house in sight, just pure, unadulterated wilderness. And that air, Luke, that nearly blew you off the top of the mountain, that is some of the cleanest air in the world. So
it was coming straight from the South Pole.
beautiful place.
Is it Arctic or Antarctic? I've got to.
It'd be Antarctic, yeah, but that air's gone 2/3 of the way around the world before it hit your face.
And it's funny, because it says at Hobart International Airport. I said, international? I said, yes, because they fly to the Antarctic. And that's why Hobart Airport is labelled international.
Well, not only that, we've just started direct flights to New Zealand. So we've doubled our international capacity recently, which is terrific.
It's nice to meet you. So thank you so much. I wanted to talk to you about the latest Resolve poll that's come out in the Herald and Age today, and One Nation dropping off 3% in popularity. And we'll talk maybe about why you think that's happened. But something I think is more important, and that is the prices we're all paying at our supermarkets. And just as importantly, Senator, the price at the farm gate that the farmers get, and then the price that we're paying for that produce at the supermarket. You're concerned about all of this. What is your main concern? Outline it for us.
Well, the big issue, like you might remember, I'm sure you do, Luke, that we ran and I chaired an inquiry into supermarkets a couple of years ago, and in the end we got enough pressure onto the government. They put in place some provisions in the code of practice that were better for people on the land, primary producers, gave them a little bit more power in their negotiations with supermarket chains, but also put in place some provisions to stop supermarkets price gouging. But they haven't really shown up at the checkout. But look, to answer your question, the issue in Australian supermarkets is quite simple. There is a concentration of market power enjoyed by the duopoly, Coles and Woolworths. What that concentration means is that the competitive forces that in a proper economy would act to keep prices down don't operate in our supermarket sector, which allows Coles and Woolworths to price gouge their customers. And we've all stood at the supermarket checkout with a quarter of a trolley or a third of a trolley and just been absolutely flabbergasted at the price once all our items have been rung through the checkout. And the problem here is this concentration of market power and the fact that we don't have the powers that would allow the government to break up the supermarket duopoly. So that impacts on customers, but it also impacts on farmers and primary producers.
Well, that was my point. And the thing is, we've got a thing in place called the ACCC, and yet Coles and Woolies don't seem to want to play by the rules. And you look at the way Coles got caught with their pants down. You see what I did there? On that advertising campaign, when in fact the prices weren't going down. They did for a second. And if you look at a duopoly, and I mentioned Qantas, and I mentioned that quite deliberately because both governments for a long time have protected Qantas, and yet we, the customers, have had no competition to enjoy. Why wouldn't you let Etihad? Why wouldn't you let other planes who come in from overseas and are empty when they get to Brisbane, let them fly domestically to Sydney, to Melbourne, to Adelaide, to Perth, and then carry on their merry way? It's protected an industry, and we, the customers, have ended up paying through the nose.
Well, monopolies and duopolies never benefit the customers. What they do is benefit the shareholders and the owners of the companies that enjoy those duopolies. And again, it's part of funneling the money in our society out of the pockets of ordinary everyday people into the pockets of super wealthy investors. But whether it's airlines, Luke, whether it's supermarkets, we've got to ensure that there is competitive pressure and we've got to stop price gouging. Now, you referred to the ACCC, and to be fair to the ACCC, they have taken action against supermarket corporations in relation to these fake discounts. And what happens with these fake discounts is that supermarkets will have a particular price for a particular item. They will then bump the price up significantly, and then they will drop the price, but not as far as it is necessary to drop it to its original price, and then they will still claim that that item is on special, even though they are charging a price for that item that is above the original price that that item sat at. Now, that is just misleading, deceptive, and it is price gouging, and that needs to stop. The other issue that we're facing coming down the line now, supermarkets, is surge pricing or dynamic pricing.
Explain that. Yes, explain that.
Yeah. So We've got a situation where Coles and Woolworths and a range of other, like Bunnings, will be doing this too. Some of the big chemist wholesalers and retailers will be doing this too. They will be putting in place labels that are not paper labels anymore. They are digital labels, and they will allow for instantaneous changes to prices. Now, what that means is that with facial recognition software, they will be surveilling. So, Luke, you're coming down aisle 4 in Coles. Here comes Luke. Now, we know Luke likes an icy pole on a hot day. It's 30 degrees outside today. We know Luke's likely to pay 20 cents more for an icy pole given it's a hot day because we've got his whole shopping record, because we surveil him at the checkout. We know what Luke likes. We know what Luke doesn't like. Here comes Luke down aisle 4. That's where the icy poles are. We'll just put up the price of frosty fruits by 20 cents and bang, you've been hooked in. You're paying more for your icy poles than you normally would. And they've done that because they are surveilling you. They are invading your privacy, and they are crunching all of your data together to generate this real-time opportunity for better price gouging. So this is surveillance capitalism, and it's coming to a supermarket near you.
Are you 100% sure? Because Bunnings talked about this, and they said it was all in the name of theft to help combat store theft. Are you suggesting that they will facially recognise us when we step into Coles and Woolies and then channel in? How would they get our data just by knowing our face?
Well, they've got your data because they are already surveilling you as you walk down the aisles in the supermarket. And then when you go to the checkout and pay with your credit card, that is linked to your financial history and it is linked to you. And Coles, for example, have contracted Palantir, one of the most dangerous mass surveillance corporations anywhere in the world. Coles have contracted Palantir to do some data management work for them. And I think it's a matter of time before we see this kind of surveillance, this invasion of privacy, this dynamic, what they call dynamic pricing or surge pricing. It's being put in place in supermarkets around the world now. And Woolworths, for example, have said that they intend to have every store in Australia switched over to digital labelling within just a few years. Coles are trialling digital labelling. And I know the supermarkets are going to say, no, this is not about dynamic pricing. This is just about theft, or this is just about managing everyone's data. But I'll tell you what, if you trust the supermarkets, by all means take their word for it. I don't trust the supermarkets. They've been price gouging Australians for years, and the supermarkets will always do what's in the best interests of making more money for them rather than what's in the best interests of their shoppers.
What you're saying is quite frightening if it does indeed happen. And I had a chat on this podcast a little while ago about the flybys. I'm using Coles, but they all have these loyalty cards, and you tap it when you get your groceries, and you get points, or you get a discount, or whatever. So they're tracking if I choose to use the Flybuys card at Coles. That's my decision, so long as I'm made aware that they've got my data. But if I walk down aisle 3 at Coles and they're scanning my face and they've tracked my shopping habits, that is completely without my permission. How can that be allowed? How can that be allowed to happen?
Well, it's being allowed to happen because there are no rules and laws in place to stop it. And this is where the government has to come in and actually stand up to some of these big corporations and make sure that actually there are laws in place that protect shoppers. But, it took the Greens campaigning for 2 years, when we were running our campaign against the big supermarkets. And you might remember I threatened to throw Brad Banducci in prison at one stage for not answering my questions.
Senator, I've answered the question many times.
You have not answered the question, Mr. Banducci. Honestly, I'm not interested in your spin or your bullshit. This is a Senate inquiry. Answer the question. It is open to the Senate to hold you in contempt, and that carries potential sanctions, including up to 6 months imprisonment for you.
Never got him in there, unfortunately. But you need governments prepared to stand up to big corporations. The problem we've got is our political system is in the pockets of big corporations, and the system is just not working to protect the interests of ordinary people at the moment. And we need politicians, we need political parties who are willing to stand up to the big corporations, who are willing to say to, for example, the supermarket giants, no, you cannot digitally surveil your customers. You can't use facial recognition software in your stores. You can't put in place surge pricing based on the individual purchasing history of your customers that we know you have access to. And we've got to put in place safeguards. But in order for those safeguards to be put in place, you've got to have politicians who are prepared to stand up to corporations, and we have far too few of those.
Brad Banducci was a controversial figure, yes, in charge of Woolworths and TEG, and he went to ticketing. But when he was at Woolworths, everyone said he went very, very woke, and, you know, on Australia Day, they weren't selling Australia Day merchandise and things like that. He got it, I think, quite wrong. Where is he now?
I don't know. Don't know, but like these CEOs get paid so much, Luke. He's probably, he could be sitting on a beach somewhere in the world drinking daiquiris for all I know. But let's be really clear about this. Some of these CEOs get $6, $8, $10 million a year for running these giant corporations, and all of those dollars in their salary packages, in their bonus packages, come out of the pockets of ordinary Australians who are being price gouged at the supermarket checkout.
Okay. I've spoken to Dick Smith a few times. He has a massive problem with Aldi. And now Coles actually used to stock the Dick Smith Australian-grown home brand products. And he said Coles was very good to him. He said at least the money that Coles makes goes to Australian shareholders. He says Aldi, every cent of every profit goes overseas to Germany. Does he have a point?
Well, I'm not sure that all the Coles shareholders are Australian. I think there'd be some big international funds holding shares in Coles. So I don't think that's necessarily completely true, although there would be a lot of Australians who do own Coles shares. And yes, there is an issue with profits going overseas, no doubt about that. But we do need more competition in our supermarket sector. Like that is, we have to put in place more competition in our supermarket sector. Coles and Woolworths own about 2/3 of the supermarket sector in Australia. That is far too high. We need to break them up, and we need to bring in more competition, because ultimately competition will mean lower prices.
Let's look at Bunnings. Now, you talk to anyone who wants to buy a tap, a tool, some timber, you name it, they love Bunnings, and Bunnings is very, very smart with its marketing. The cheapest thing they did, the best PR, was the sausage sizzle thing, and bringing local charities and local fundraising together, the Nippers, the Scouts and all that. And there they are cooking a sausage on a Saturday in the car park at Bunnings, and it's a great PR thing. But I'm amazed that any hardware store in Australia is able to compete. I don't know how Mitre 10, and a lot of those Mitre 10 stores are family-owned franchises, and I don't know how they compete. It's all about owning massive real estate and going huge. So let's get back to supermarkets. What happened to Safeway? What happened to Franklin's? We've got IGA, which is a very small player, and you've got Aldi. And then you've got 82% belonging to Woolies and Coles. Do we have the population to support more competition?
Oh, we certainly do. The problem we've got is that governments have sat on their hands for decades, and they've watched Coles and Woolworths buy up and absorb so much of the competition. And it's not just about buying up little individual shops or little individual customers. They engage in land banking, where they buy land, not for the purposes of putting their own supermarkets in place, but for the purposes of stopping somebody else coming in and putting in a supermarket in a particular area, and thereby increasing competition in that area. So they act to suppress competition, and governments have allowed them to get away with it for so long. Now, we recently put in place stronger competition laws, which will give the ACCC powers to stop that happening so often in the future. But we need divestiture laws, which are the powers for the ACCC and the government to break up big corporations, to bring back some genuine competition into the supermarket sector and in other sectors, including airlines, as you mentioned, in Australia. But we don't have divestiture laws. We're one of the only so-called liberal democracies in the world, or free market economies in the world, that do not have divestiture powers, and it's a gaping hole in our regulatory framework.
Just getting back to this eye recognition and being able to track a buyer's shopping retail habits, what do you say to the people that will say, Senator, you've got a tin hat on and you're a flat earther, this is all just pie in the sky, you're getting us all concerned about nothing. What backs up your concerns? You say it's a reality. Is it really? Let me understand why you think this is going to happen?
Well, Woolworths have said publicly they're going to move to digital labelling within a few years in all of their stores. Coles are trialling it. It's being trialled in other sort of non-supermarket sector retail outlets across the board in our economy. It's a money saver for them, of course, because you don't have to walk around changing the paper. You don't have to hire someone to walk around and change the paper labelling on all the stores and all the aisles. You just have someone sitting in a box, so probably most likely you have a computer doing it. And it makes absolute sense. Now, the supermarket corporations will deny that they're going to put in place dynamic pricing. But I say two things to people. One, do not trust Coles and Woolworths. They've been price gouging you for years. They cannot be trusted to tell you the truth. Secondly, look at what's happening around the world. This is coming in the United States. It's coming in Europe. It's a money saver. It's an enabler of price gouging, and it is coming to a supermarket near you in the very near future here in Australia. And look, I'll tell you what, if it's not in 5 years' time in Australia, I will come onto your podcast and I will eat the biggest serve of humble pie that anyone ever saw eaten, but I'm very confident that I'll be proved right here.
Do you know what it reminds me of, Senator? You remember that 2002 movie with Tom Cruise, Minority Report? You remember that? And he gets somebody else's eyes. And he's walking through a shopping centre and all the billboards and all the advertising reads his eyes and then projects advertising custom made to him because they know his shopping record because of his eyes. Do you remember that? I
do remember that, and we're already seeing the early stages of that now where, if you buy something through one of the social media companies, I'm not going to name them and help their brand recognition, but you're on a social media platform, a globally popular one. You buy something through that platform, and suddenly it's serving up ads for you for more of the same. Now that's a very early stage, and it shows that you are being surveilled. They know what you like to buy. They're going to serve you up ads. Now they will say, and some people will say, well, that's useful. I bought a pair of pants, and now I'm getting ads for more pair of pants. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Sure. But if you take it down to your supermarket aisle and you put in place this surge pricing, this surveillance, the facial recognition software, the invasion of your privacy, I think a lot of people are going to be uncomfortable with that. And I don't want to see that here in Australia. I don't want to see our big corporations basically using the same powers that government has to surveil you, but they're using it to surveil you to make a bigger profit out of you, and that's the problem.
You mentioned social media platforms, and if we just go there for a second, and I'll use the other word, algorithms, which are very, very efficient. And I remember some years ago, my mum was suffering dementia and going downhill very quickly, and my cousin who had power of attorney, we were talking about having to take mum's car away and move her into care because she couldn't look after herself. And we were having a discussion on our front table out here on the front deck. And the next few days, myself and my cousin, we started getting all these ads for retirement homes on our phones. Yep. Now, I put this to Trevor Long, the tech expert. This is years ago. And he said, no, look, I think that's probably what they call cognitive bias, where those ads were there anyway, but now you're in the market for a retirement home for your mum. You're seeing these ads more often. I disagree. We were literally bombarded for advertising from retirement homes, way more than you normally would. So are our devices really listening to us? And what sort of say do we have that what we discuss or what we look at doesn't affect the images that we and our kids get?
Well, I think they are listening. I think our devices are listening to us, and we've all got.
See, there's the tin hat again. See, there's the tin.
Well, people can say I've got the tin hat on. That's fine. It's free will.
No, but I'm listening to you. Yeah.
But look, whether it's not always with retirement places, but we've all surely had that experience where you've been sitting around chatting. I've got one of my young family members was telling me only a few months ago, she was sitting around with all the girlfriends and they were talking about, it was during the summer, they were talking about bikinis and what's the latest fashion in bikinis, and suddenly they're getting flooded with bikini ads on their social media. We've all got a story like that, right? So look, whether they're listening, honestly, I don't know. I'm not a tech expert, but what I will say is that this style of surveillance capitalism is becoming more and more common. It is becoming more and more oppressive, and it is becoming more and more personal. And the data management systems that are available now allow your shopping habits and your online purchases to be linked to your identity, and your identity to be linked to your facial recognition. They have gait recognition now, which is how you walk. So that is the next iteration of facial recognition. So they can see you coming, Luke, from a long, long way away. And we know what corporations are interested in. They are interested in profit. They are interested because they're greedy and they want to make the most money out of you that they can. And they will do whatever they think they can get away with, including breaking the law a lot of the time, if it means they can make a greater profit. And we've seen that through human history. We're seeing it more and more today, where corporations are pushing the envelope. They are breaking the law. And I have no doubt that we have got surge pricing in supermarkets coming down the line, facilitated by digital facial recognition, by digital price tags, and by the crunching of all of the data that supermarkets have gathered about your shopping habits over the years. And that will mean that you, Luke, will be paying more for your icy pulse on a hot day than you otherwise would have.
Especially when it's 30 degrees outside. We reached the 30 degrees. Right. It is frightening stuff. It's something to think about, which is what we do here on the Bonafide podcast. I want to invite you to come back on the Bonafide. I have my regulars, and I'd love you to be one, because there's a lot more to Senator Nick McKim than what we have time for today. But I've got to ask you this. One Nation was soaring to popularity, but we saw for the third consecutive week One Nation in the Resolve poll out today that they've fallen again. They peaked at 31.5% in June, but they've fallen 3 points today. And I saw Barnaby Joyce on Sunrise, and they were putting it to Barnaby Joyce that her comments about multiculturalism, monoculturalism has been misunderstood or hard to understand or divisive, and maybe that was the point. Let me ask you this, because you did hold dual citizenship at one point. And there was a drama over that. But you happily live in this country. And I spoke to Pauline Hanson on this podcast, and I asked her what she meant by monoculturalism versus multiculturalism, and people who want to live in Australia embracing Australian culture. So here's my question for you. What to you defines Australian culture?
Well, we all know what Australian culture is. You just need to go out your door and have a look around. And one thing I will say about Australian culture, I mean, like you said, I was born in the UK, but I was 5 years old when my family came out to Tassie. And as I kept saying to Mum and Dad for decades, that was the best decision they ever could have made for their kids. And I'm very, very happy, and obviously naturalised Australian. But look, Australian culture is what it is. It's made up of people from around the world. Unless you're a First Nations person, we're all migrants or sons or daughters or descendants of migrants here in Australia. Doesn't matter whether you come from Europe, doesn't matter whether you come from Africa, doesn't matter whether you come from Asia. We are all here, and together we make Australian culture. It is a giant, beautiful melting pot of people from around the world who have come here to enjoy this place and to work together to make this the best place in the world to live. And the idea that you have to have a particular skin colour, or you have to speak a particular language, or you have to eat a particular food, or you have to have a particular religious belief or no religious belief at all, like those things don't matter. What matters is we are all here together and we are going to make this work together. And because of what we are, this is the best place in the world. Is this the perfect place to live? No, it's not. Do we have some challenges? Absolutely. We've got some challenges, but the challenges in this country are not caused by migrants. They are not caused by migration. The challenges in this country are caused because too few people, the super wealthy, the 1%, and the big corporations have too much power, and ordinary everyday people have not got enough power or money. And I say to people, if you are struggling to make ends meet, if you want to know where your money's gone, look into the pockets of the billionaires, because that's where your money is, and let's take some of it back and let's build a fairer society for everyone by making the big corporations and the 1% super wealthy pay their fair share of tax so we can give more support and financial assistance to people that are doing it tough.
Senator Nick McKim, fantastic to talk to you. As we say on the podcast, we don't tell you what to think. We like to give you something to think about. You've given us a lot to think about today and maybe a little bit to be worried about.
Well, we've got some things to be worried about, but we've also got the capacity to take power back from the 1% and power in the hands of the 99%, Luke, and that's what I'm here for.
Senator Nick McKim, thank you so much.
Thanks, mate. Look forward to the next chat.
Well, I think we're all horrified. Every teacher and every parent certainly was when a survey commissioned by one of Queensland's most powerful unions revealed that more than half of the state's teachers and school leaders have been subjected to verbal abuse from students, and that's on a daily basis. The Queensland Teachers Union commissioned the external survey. They surveyed over 9,000 educators. A whopping 57.5% of teachers and school leaders said verbal aggression was the most common form of abuse in the classroom over the last 12 months. And every day, or every second day at least, we wake up to the news that more violence has happened in our schools. A recent spate of stabbings has got Queensland educators on their toes. Now, the Q2U Vice President is Lee Olsen, who said the union commissioned the survey to ensure members had the opportunity to share their experiences on the front line. But the point of the whole thing is that you've got educators, you've got teachers who are scared to go to school. They're scared to go to work. And parents must be concerned for the safety of their children. So why all this violence? Why are children so angry? It was thought that social media was encouraging this behaviour, but now there's supposed to be a ban on 16 and under Australian children having access to social media platforms. Well, we know that there are loopholes and plenty of kids are still jumping on. Now, I wanted to talk to a fascinating woman. She is a passionate educator and her credentials are a mile long. Her name is Tracey Tully, and she started as a primary teacher at Normanton State School in the Gulf of Carpentaria, and that was back in 1981. She was chosen for the job because of her background and ability to handle remote and isolated areas. She will tell you that behaviour science and behaviour management is her passion. She took on work with Air Surveillance Coast Watch Patrol based out of Normanton, eventually returned to teaching and travelled everywhere. She left the top end for 3 years at the Charleville School of the Air. She then transferred as a teaching principal and a new mum at Erromunga, which is the farthest town from the sea in any given direction in Australia. It's remote. Eventually, she became disappointed with education and where it was going. She felt she had no chance at changing things. So she transferred to a high school and became the principal at one of the top 10 worst high schools in Queensland. She started the first shearing education program in the Outback College of Rural Education as a community not fit for profit to help kids who couldn't cope with mainstream schooling. She fought the system over many years as a whistleblower, and that started back in 2010. In fact, the Director General refused to close her schools. The schools were knee-high with problems. She took on the power of the schools. She took on a passion to protect children and staff, and she continues that today. She speaks her mind, she doesn't pull punches, and as I said, and as I've just pointed out, she has a lot of credentials. Tracey Tully, welcome to the Bonafide podcast.
Thank you, Luke. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Hey, listen, you and I have a lot to talk about, and I mentioned the survey that was commissioned by the Teachers Federation or the Teachers Union in Queensland, how an overwhelming amount of teachers feel unsafe in their workplace, and I want to talk to you about the violence that we're seeing in schools, the anger, and the social media ban on 16 and unders. I think that was they were hoping that might curb that behaviour because a lot of it was fueled by peer group pressure on social media. And yet we're still seeing this violence and this anger. And you have some really strong thoughts and all of that. But I just want to go back a little bit. And I've mentioned some of your credentials in my introduction. But you are a passionate educator, and I love that. What led you to educating? Was it always your calling?
No, I was in the generation where, you're either a secretary, a nurse, or a teacher. And I thought I'd be a nurse because I'd spend a lot of time with my father in the air as a flying doctor. And he said, no, don't do that, Tracey. He said, you'll be too many late nights, shift work. He said, ruin a family life and you won't be able to enjoy your kids. He said, no, do teaching. And so I said, oh, okay. So I went and did teaching and I fell in love with it. But if there are other jobs I would have liked to do, journalism would have been up there. My mum did journalism.
Not too late. Hey, yeah. Tracey, can I just say this? There is a book. There is a book in you, and I'm serious. We can talk about that down the track because I think you need to write not just your incredible story, but talk more about your philosophy. Yes. Because juvenile crime was a huge election issue in Queensland, and David Crucifili said, we're going to bring in adult time for adult crime, and it seemed to have an effect. But we're still seeing around Australia kids, and just remember the age of criminal responsibility is 10, but do kids actually know? See, I don't think you're going to get a change in behaviour unless there are consequences. If the police are doing their job and they're arresting juvenile delinquents and criminals, well, they're not criminals until they're convicted, but they're kids with criminal behaviour, and the judiciary just says slap on the wrist, and a lot of these crimes are taking place while on bail, let alone on parole. If there's no consequences, you cannot, in my opinion, change behaviour.
Absolutely.
But we'll go back. We'll get to that. You taught at a lot of schools, and I mentioned one of the schools you taught at was Australia's most remote school, furthest from the sea of any other town in Australia. You've dealt with problem kids. I'm tipping your share of Indigenous kids who have problems. Is that when you first thought, gee, this is another world? This is another world.
At Eromanga, I would still say Eromanga was the best school I ever taught at. It was absolutely superb.
Where's that? Give us a geography lesson.
Okay, Eromanga, if you head straight west from Brisbane, on your way to Birdsville, but then you hang a lefty and you go to Eromanga. So it's two hours past Quilpie. So, about 12, 14 hours from Brisbane, straight west. And there's a mining refinery there, inland oil refinery. That's all that's there really in the school, and the best community that you could want. And I loved that particular school, absolutely adored it. It was just wonderful in every way, and so were the kids and families. My other schools, totally different, but zero behaviour issues at Eromanga. The isolation didn't worry me. I'm used to that. I was brought up with isolation. So
let me just say from the outset, I am proudly Indigenous. I'm a recognised Wiradjuri elder, but I think we've got some massive problems and I think we're throwing money in the wrong direction. Now, I'm going to tell you a story at the risk of boring my producer Kelsey and maybe some of my listeners, but you will appreciate this. When I lived in Bathurst, I was seeing this lovely young girl who was doing GP, General Primary, at Charles Sturt University. It was Mitchell College back then. And she went on 2 weeks' work experience as a primary school teacher to Wilcannia. Now, mind you, this young girl, she's now a woman, this girl was originally from Geary, Dubbo. Mm-hmm. So she had experience with Indigenous behavioural problems, and some of them are unique, some of them not. But she said the eye-opener at Wilcannia was unbelievable. And she took control of this class, and it was primary school, obviously, and it only had 4 students in it, all white. And she said to her headmistress, "Where's my class?" And she said, "The rest are Indigenous, but they just don't turn up." And she said, "What about truancy? Aren't there checks? Aren't there welfare checks? Why aren't these kids in school?" She said, "Our hands are tied. We can't do anything about it. If they turn up, they turn up." So one day she said to the kids, "We're going to do a cooking class. What would you like to learn to cook? And we'll have cooking on Friday." And one of the kids said, "Baked beans on toast." This is not a lie. She said, "Okay, we're going to cook baked beans on toast for lunch this Friday." The Friday turned up, full attendance. The word got round, every child turned up for baked beans on toast. So, red flag. And she asked the headmistress, "Why are all the garbage bins chained to posts in the playground?" She said, "Because our Indigenous kids have terrible diets, which leads to behavioural problems. They are on high sugar diets. Their parents aren't spending the money on quality food. And quality food, fresh vegetables, tough to get. And so they're filling up on shit, and it leads to behavioural problems." Now, my mob, we never had refined sugar until 250 years ago. Same thing with alcohol, didn't have alcohol. That's why there's such a high incidence of diabetes, type 1, type 2 with Indigenous, because we're not used to processing refined sugar. But they were throwing the garbage bins in fits of rage. And the only time she had full attendance was when she cooked baked beans on toast. You think about all the money we spend and the sponsorships that could be available. I mean, I don't want to give McDonald's a plug, but if you give a free breakfast to every child, black, white, brindle, green, purple, doesn't matter what colour, kids will turn up. What are your thoughts? I mean, it's just a reflection on something that I can tell you about.
Winning chicken dinner, winner, chicken dinner. No, definitely meals is what it's all about. It's all about relevance to students, no matter where you are, whatever culture you are, any environment. It's all about relevance and how you deliver education. And this is what the education departments don't seem to understand, or the government sectors, because every single environment or location, as you would know, is different and specific needs to its environment. I wrote a paper with a doctor here at one of the universities on this, about the issues around that, and all their jobs the same thing related to it. So if you don't teach in accordance with that, in Normanton, for example, we would go outside and we would teach math out there in the environment, and we'd use things like chinky apples or whatever to count with, etc. So you make it relevant. That's missing, and it doesn't take a lot to adapt your program. But the problem here that we have in education is what we call inclusion, as you would be aware of. And inclusion is trying to fit everyone into one peg. A one peg, one hole, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. It never will work. It was ridiculous to start with. And so, yes, the behaviours are affected at the first level, purely with things like a lack of care, love, physical development. We've got food. And communication is the biggest. Lack of communication. We don't teach that right down at the young age. And obviously we had the medical issues. So, back in Normanton, we had alcohol fetal syndrome, a high level of alcohol fetal syndrome. Mm-hmm. In Mornington Island, we had rape. Children raping their aunties, babies, things like that. And this is in primary school. Luke, the average...
Where do they learn this?
It's in their culture there. That's all part of their culture. You're on an island, and it wasn't... So the island was had Lardle and Bentinck, so two different cultural groups. One was moved onto Mornington Island because of lack of water, etc. So then you had this infighting. You have to look at your environment, and governments can't do that. Their whole system doesn't allow to do it. So what they have to be smart at is searching for groups who can. Not groups who want money, but groups who can actually deliver. We're talking about surveys, you're talking about a union survey, and all well and good, but the best survey I have seen for principals has been done by the Australian Catholic University and Deakin University. You cannot get any better than that. It is the best in Australia. We need those two universities to come together and do the same thing for teachers. You've only got one group they're surveying, the union members. What about the rest? They've all got a say as well. So it's not accurate.
Yeah, and it's funny because when you have surveys conducted by a group, you do wonder, does the group performing the survey have a narrative to start with? Correct. And they'll make the results suit their narrative.
Absolutely do. And when we look at unions, the unions are a business. We've got the QTU, which is $50 million in assets, and they have 50,000, so they say 50,000 members. But it's a business, a subscription membership business. That's it. That's all there is to it. So, but they stick their bib and they stick their nose into all these other ideological things that they want influenced with the curriculum. They're industrial relations. That's wages and workplace health and safety, but they still go over into the other areas. So yes, they do have a narrative like a lot of areas. That's why I said I would love to see Catholic University, Australian Catholic University in Deakin, do the same thing, get the funding and do it for teachers.
But, this problem of violence in schools and the rage and the anger, it isn't just centred on remote schools or schools with a high Indigenous problem. No. I got a very good friend of mine, and his nickname is Big Dog, and he was an art teacher at a pretty well-to-do school on Sydney's Northern Beaches. He got assaulted by a 15-year-old. To this day, he is stressed. I'm sure he's got PTSD. He can't teach anymore. And this was a kid from a good background that just suddenly flipped out and assaulted him in the classroom. And it's appalling. And every second morning, we wake up to hearing about a kid being stabbed, someone bringing a knife to school and using it as a weapon against students or teachers. And I've had teachers ring me on my Talkback radio program telling me I've been verbally abused, I have been physically challenged, and I haven't had any support from the hierarchy, the faculty, and the parents go, not my child. My child wouldn't do that. And I've had teachers ring me and tell me I don't feel protected or safe in my workplace. That's appalling.
And that's right on. That's right, spot on. And that's exactly how it is. And it's not new. It's been around for a long, long time. And the general population has no idea what really happens every single day. I'll share one day with you in 2004. Just one day, I drove into my new school. I had driven through the front gates. I looked to the right-hand side, and on the oval was one of my senior students, and he was holding a girl down and burning her with a cigarette butt all over her. That was my first day in 2004.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. So I went, I stopped the car, and I got out and I said, I'm your new principal, grab your gear, up to the office. And then I said to the young lady, come with me, we're going to take you to the nurse's station and do what we need to do. And then I said to him, I'm walking you to the gates and I'm exiting you and you're never coming back. Tell your parents to come here at 5 o'clock to see me and we'll discuss what happens next with you. And I did 6 of those that day. I exited 6.
What?
Boys.
You expelled 6 boys on your first day. What were the other expulsions about?
Really, really violent physical assault and continuous violence that no one had done anything about because, hey, they're boys. Boys fight. No, they don't. Not in my school. No. And no, you don't. You don't fight at school. And so I actually started up that week. I had to mobilise a whole shearing community and the union and put together this sheep shearing program just for these boys because I wanted them to stay enrolled. And I'd worked with tough kids my whole life, so I knew I could turn them around. I knew I could if I had the right environment for them. These were big boys. These were men. They were young men. They were strong, fit. They were piggers and roost shooters. These kids were in the wrong environment in school to learn. And so I spoke to Sunbeam. Sunbeam sponsored us and gave us the best top trainer in Australia, sheep shearing trainer. And we mobilised those kids. Parents signed a contract with me. That we were taking the boys. If they wanted to stay enrolled, they had to come with us for 6 weeks, no phones, no alcohol, no cigarettes. And then I got our sheep shearers. I hand-selected 6, the best shearers I could find to be mentors, one-on-one with these boys, and I sent them out with this into shearing teams. They weren't to come back in for 6 weeks. They had to stay out to dry out and all the rest. And it was really fantastic because I get phone calls every now and then to tell me how they're going. And one boy, the aggression was horrendous and he was eye gouging the sheep. And the trainer rang up and he said, Tracey, he said, I need you. You need to come out here and sort this kid out. He said, because I think the shearers are going to sort him out shortly if you don't. And he said, I told him you're coming, so you better get in your car. And he said, we need to do something about him. Anyway, I got there and the boy was shearing and I said, oh, what happened? What happened between the phone call now? He said, oh, well, I had a whisper in his ear and I said, you see that girl standing next to you shearing? He said, do you know how much money she's making? Every time she shears a sheep, while you lose your temper on the sheep and you're bashing them and everything. And he said, pull out a gear, mate. You just sit there and watch how much money you're losing. And that's what it was about. It was that simple.
Okay, but let's go back a bit further. And let's talk about these stabbings in schools and the bashings and the violence.
Yeah.
Where is that coming from?
Well, it comes from, as you said, the anger. And the anger is once again about the environment at home. So you have food is a problem. You have unmonitored time on systems. Gaming is huge. Social media is huge. Not enough physical development type work. Sports, team sports especially. And communication, sitting down and having a conversation. All my violent kids used to come and have lunch with me once a week. And they'd have to sit round a table, and we would have a lunch together and talk about life, etc. And they would share everything because they never had that chance to do. And they trusted me. And they wouldn't play their silly games, psychologically with me. These kids only know how to act out their hurt and etc. But at the end of the day, using weapons, that they're not they're not taught consequences, but they're not taught the boundaries.
Because you and I are of the same era. And I went to school where there was corporal punishment. There was the cane.
Mm.
We were terrified of our teachers, not just because of the possibility of getting hit, but we were terrified of our parents and their reaction to our behaviour when we were reported. Terrified. What's changed? I mean, I'm not suggesting we bring back corporal punishment in schools. In fact, that would never get across the line. If my parents were contacted, was the end of the effing world. There were consequences.
Absolutely. I was born into a defence family, so this was tough. Yeah, really tough. And as it should have been too, because I had a big life in front of me, and I probably needed, and I needed that, not probably. And my father said, if ever anything happens at school and I hear about it, it's going to be 10 times worse when you get home. And so I was the first female in grade 8 in South Australia at a school called Gawler High School to get the cane. And I got the cane because I
didn't think you were allowed to cane girls back in our day. Yeah. You weren't allowed. Geez, that was a tough school. Girls couldn't get the cane at our school.
All right. Yeah, well, we could. And all because I was representing Queensland at the swimming nationals. And I had to go to this meeting that lunch hour, and the deputy had kept our maths class in and refused me. And so I just left and said, no, that's important to me. I'm going to do that. And that's it. I didn't do the damage that all these boys are doing. I don't deserve to stay here. So I got the cane for it. And then, and my wonderful phys ed teacher advocated for me, and I was able to go to the swimming. But Dad, when I talked to Dad about it, and he said, well, we talked about it. So I didn't get the cane at home. There's nothing to get the strap. But, I agree with you. You have, I was a teacher with the cane and as principal with the cane. I think my last school was Warwick.
Did you give the cane? Did you give the cane?
Yeah, I got the cane and I used to give the cane, yeah.
You used to give it, did you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we did in those days. And do you know, I'll never forget my first day in this school. And I was employed to particularly just take all the behaviour kids in the school. All the behaviour kids in school in one class. And I walked in and I looked at them all. And these kids were fit. Once again, they're boxers. They're only in grade 7, but they're all around the 13, coming into 14. And so boxing, running, they're fit as anything. I love their sports. And so I said, righto, here's the deal. You do as you're told with me. And in return, I'll go, you can teach me how to play cricket and I'll ref your cricket since you can't get anyone to ref your lunch.
It's umpiring. It's called umpiring, please. You don't ref cricket, you umpire it. You ref footy.
Yes,
oh, dear.
Correct.
So you related to the kids. You were able to pinpoint and diagnose where the problem was coming from and treat that problem. You remind me of a great friend of this podcast, Bob Davis, who runs a boot camp in Queensland called Hard Yakka. And he gets a 96% success rate and he turns them round. Of the 6 kids that you expelled on your first day as a new principal at this particular school, how many of them came back and turned themselves around?
All of them.
All of them?
Yeah. And I still track them. I know what they're doing. So out of all of them, I said to them never to step foot on my school again. But it gave me a shearer's singlet. And that became their identity. Every time they came into town, they wore it. And so in the end, they had turned themselves around, and within that time, and I said, you can come to the awards night and I'll let you into the awards night. Do the wrong thing and I'll be walking out to the gate. And I knew they wouldn't. Anyway, they did. They came and I had special awards for them. So they could demonstrate to the community, to themselves, to their parents, they had beat their demons. They had done well. I lost 2 died, not that year, but later. They stayed with the program for a long time. They died, one from a pigging accident. He fell on his knife when he's running and it got him in the groin. It was terrible, beautiful kid. And the other one, another really sad one, he had brain cancer. The rest are all still in the sheep shearing industry and none of them went to jail.
Wow. And they all finished school.
Yeah, they all finished school, and they're wealthy men now. They own 2-3 houses, cars with leather seats. They've done well for themselves, and as a result, I actually spoke to them. What can I do to help the other kids? And so I set up this off-site school centre specifically for the kids, and I employed a special teacher to teach them. He was an Indigenous teacher. And that's how we started. And that off-site centre involved around cooking, eating, physical activity, and literacy and numeracy, or the basics.
Yeah, wow. Wow, what an interesting life you've had and still are having, and you've been a whistleblower, much to the aggravation and frustration of the hierarchy. That must have give us an example.
It all started with a flood in Charleville, and I was actually managing the two schools there, the primary school and the high school. Lived in Charleville for a long time. I was well aware how the floods were planned out, and I knew what was coming and how high it would come. It was really simple. I was down in the primary school, right on the creek. I rang the central office and I asked approval to close my school, because that's what you had to do then. And they said no. And I said, I could not believe my ears. I said, why? They said, no, because you can't. You just got to keep your schools open. And I said, but this is terrible. I said, my teachers are losing their homes, their cars, because it was flooding throughout the town. Anyway, second phone call, same thing, no. By the third phone call, the water was knee high. The power was on. I couldn't turn the power off. It had to be turned off by facilities. And I rang up, and no word of a lie, I got F you, Tracey. What part of F and no can't you understand? You're not closing the school. And I just looked outside and I thought, oh, well. And I said to her, well, F you too. I'm closing the school. And I hung up. I rang the police, the detective inspector, Mick Dowie, fantastic officer. And I said, mate, Mick, this is what I've done, just letting you know. I'm exiting every kid out of the school now, workplace health and safety, and blah, 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 blah. And I said, and I've done my career. And he said, yep, you sure have done your career, but there's more behind this than you realise, Tracey. So when it's over, come and have a beer and a barbecue with me and I'll explain it all. So that's how it started. I incurred the wrath of the department for going against the Director Generals. So I reported her to Workplace Health and Safety, and I spared her no mercy, because one of my beautiful teachers, in his fear, came running up to me just prior to that last phone call, and he said to me, Tracey, I put all these kids on the bonnet of my four-wheel drive and I've driven them home through the floodwaters. And I just went, what? No, you can't do that. One child slipped. And I thought, this is it. People are desperate. And so I have to support my teachers. Teachers lost a lot of their goods, etc., in cars and vehicles. No one cared in the department. It was all about politics, do you know, Luke? It was all about the upcoming election in that area. And the Labor Party wanted the Warrego Electric to vote so that they could. They needed those votes. And they thought that I was the one person that was stopping them. And the only reason I had this information is because there was a big meeting in Brisbane with the Director General and all the regional directors. And unbeknown to the Director General, a couple of them in there were very close friends with me, and they rang and told me everything that was said in that meeting. And it was, get her, go and get her. And I was rung up and they said, they'll get you. And that's what I heard all the time. Be careful, Tracey, they're going to get you. And that's exactly what they did. They turned their wrath on me for reporting her. Finally, I got, cut a long story short, I was invited to a fake lunch, morning tea, walked into this room and the treasurer was there and all these top brass. And I was actually asked to give them $20,000 in return for the top school, one of the top schools in Brisbane, and plus I was to drop my case on the Director General. And I was born in, the generation I am, and I was born into a military family, and I just said, I'm not giving you $20,000. You should be giving me $20,000. And so that was the end of that. So she was on all right. So then I had the way they came after me was
corruption.
Phenomenal. Oh, it was huge corruption. That's just one little bit, Luke. I sent everything, all the cogent evidence of what I witnessed, a lot of stuff at that level as a principal. I sent it all to the CCC, and the head of the CCC rang me and he said, oh, Trace, this is a bit of a worry because there's a lot of Labor people in the CCC. He said, I don't think anything's going to happen for you to help you here with your allegations. I said, you're kidding me. He said, no, you better come in and see me. And so I did. I went in there and sat there and listened to some of the stuff they were doing. I shook my head and I thought, well, what else do I do? There's nothing else I can do. I was stood down. I was stood down for 3 years on full pay because they didn't know what to do with me. And then when Campbell Newman got in, I was put back into teaching. And then as soon as Labor got back in again, my ex-husband at the time said to me, rang me, said, get out, finish, get out, resign. They're going to come for you so hard. I said, yep, they are. And you know what? I'll just write it all down and I'll use it against them, which is exactly what happened. So the The regional directors were telling me they sent this fellow out, a regional director out to Toowoomba, and he was governed with the job of getting me, taking me down. And he was feral, absolutely feral. Body barged me, swore, just feral, and corrupt. So corrupt.
He was a bully, but with an agenda, and he was told that he wanted you to quit. Because they couldn't sack you. Unfair dismissal, all of this would have come out. They just wanted you to go away into the sunset and disappear and be quiet. And that's not your style, I can tell.
No.
So let's talk about the problem in our schools right now.
Yes.
And this violence. I heard you say that you think to circuit break it at this time, we can look back at the psychological issues, and I've spoken to Dr. Michael Carr-Gregg about this, and I will again. You believe that all schools should have metal detectors?
Yeah, absolutely.
Explain.
Now, I'll just roll back and give you 2 reasons why it's okay for me. So as a principal, one of my schools are huge sites, massive sites, a lot of acreage, and I was really worried about the kids' health because there's all sorts of ambulances called all the time for young people. Anyway, I was tracking their health and what the problems were, and it was always the same thing, not enough support. Anyway, I wanted a defibrillator, and the department wouldn't give me one, and I said, I need one. I said, I'm not going to carry the death of a child on my hands because you won't give me one. They said, no. I said, right, I'll go and buy one. So I did. I went and bought one, and then I thought I'll buy 2, one for each end of the school. And I did. And this is long before schools bought them.
You're the Kerry Packer of the education system. Do you remember he was saved by one and he bought every New South Wales ambulance and they called it the Packer Whacker. Anyway, you out of your own pocket, you bought 2 defibrillator. Say it for me.
Defibrillator.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Defibrillator. Yeah. And then the next one was, lockdowns. And so I decided that the best way of dealing with this behaviour I'd inherited in the school, and it's still there. They tell me it's still really, really bad and they can't hold a principal there. But I built my behaviour management plan to make sure every single person understood it in plain English, not gov speak, in plain English, what would happen if you did this, if you did that, if you spat at a teacher, if you verbally abused a teacher, if you punched a kid, punched anyone, assault, physical assault. Every level I wrote down in plain English the behaviour and then the consequence for it. And I told my staff it will be immediate. All right. I said, you don't need to worry. I'm backing you. I'm going to do this. I'm doing it. I don't expect any of you to do it. I'll do it. You call me if you have a kid doing the wrong thing in the classroom. I'll do it. There's a fight outside. You call me. I'll stop it. I had running shoes on for years, and they'd see me coming and they'd be running and I could hear them yell out, "Stop it, she's coming," and they'd stop. But I also stood up in my, hall in the hall meetings, and I'd say to them, I expect you all to have each other's back. If there's someone fighting, you break it up. Stop it. You don't stand around and watch it, because if you stand around and watch it, whoever's fighting will go, and so will you.
You see, and now everyone's got a phone and they can film it, put it on social media, and that's half the attraction and half the motivation. So it's part of the motivation for kids stealing cars. They film themselves and they become heroes. I just want to get onto your theory about metal detectors, because a lot of people will hear what you have to say now and go, Jesus, are we going down the path of American schools with metal detectors because kids bring guns and knives to school? Tell me about your theory about metal detectors in schools.
As I say, I've been in schools for a long, long time. I'll go back to that 2004 incident. So from 2004 onwards, I was constantly removing machetes, guns, loaded guns, having lockdowns, knives of all sorts and sizes, constantly removing them from kids' backpacks or socks or even inside the headbands of their caps. So I would have, unpredictable moments when I'd walk around the school, because I usually did at lunchtime, and I'd say, drop your bag, empty the contents. And why? Just do as you're told. Do it. I'm not touching your bag, but I want to see what's in there. And of course, you'd always find the contraband, come out and whatnot. But they learnt then not to bring it in their bag. So it's a prevention technique. So with the machetes, when you take a machete, you know what a machete looks like. When you take a machete off a kid, it is a very defining time for you, because in that time where you've told them to drop it and then step back me at my age, even then, and speed, I was very fit, but nonetheless, they're kids and they usually got drugs in their systems. So they're ultra fast and very powerful, strong. To get that machete to stop them from hurting someone was incredibly scary. You need a lot of courage. And so I said on TV yesterday on Channel 7, at what cost? Who's going to take that machete off them in the classroom? Who? No one is trained for that. No teacher should have to go to school and put their life at risk because they have to remove a weapon from a child. It has to be done right at the beginning of the entrance at the school. The machines were, you go through it, and then it doesn't matter. Everyone looks at, it's going to cost too much. Oh, it's too hard to handle. What a load of rubbish. Every airport has one. Every sporting stadium has one. And let's face it, when we're looking at per capita per population, what's a little school compared to that? The bottom line is it's safety. Weapons kill, just like one punch kills. Weapons kill. And so prevent, not panic. Prevent, and prevents every parent having that conversation where your child has been stabbed. And it takes a while for that communication to come to that parent too. So that's equally as frightening. And then, of course, parents don't know what's happening on the other end for a while. It is, and then everyone hears about it and races to school. It's a simple prevention technique. I remember when we had no air conditioning in our school. And, of course, you would have violence like you wouldn't believe because the kids were so hot and angry. The minute you put those beautiful air conditioners in there, they'd come down and they're much easier to handle in class. Now, that costs a lot of money. And they trickled that out. So you've got your big schools. Everyone's got those big black fences now. They're very easy to manage now, kids' entrance into school. You funnel them through 2 gates in the big schools, 2 sets, two line up for a 60-second walk through a metal detector. It's that simple. And someone said to me, one of the journalists said to me the other day, but what happens? Who takes the weapon off them? And I said, well, who takes the weapon off them in the classroom?
But are we heading down the American way? And aren't metal detectors acting after the horse has bolted? We need to address the behaviour first, or do we do both at the same time?
No. And I love that question. You've captured what the general population would be asking.
I can hear them in my ears. I can hear them in my ears.
Yeah. But for me, from the inside, and I've had lockdowns with loaded weapons and kids threatening to kill other kids on the school grounds. So this is high school. And that was a grade 8er. That's a 13-year-old. And there was a reason he was crying out for help. But let's come back to your question. It was a brilliant question because we're talking about, the long-term solutions, which are solving the problems. This is not about that. This is about that spur of the moment, 1 second stab. This is about prevention. This is about another layer of safety. So we have to mind shift from the behaviours and what's happening, and we have to prevent ourselves getting sucked down that vortex and look at, we have to do this now. 1 stabbing is too many stabbings. Now, for me, when I've seen teachers stabbed, and let's face it, teachers... Oh, yeah. Pregnant women stabbed in the stomach with a pen.
What?
Yeah. This is nothing that's happening now. This is in my career. This is coming back from around the 2004 is where I saw the real violence really hitting. And you know what? It was all drug related. But anyway, let's get back to your question because it's a powerful question. So number 1, yes, we are doing what we need to do in terms of helping the kids with their behaviours, etc. But when it comes to my recommendation, my wholehearted passion to put metal detectors into schools, there's nothing intrusive in that. Absolutely nothing. And if you've been to a sports stadium, if you've been to an airport, you've been through a metal detector. And yes, the overseas kids, France and America and England, they have metal detectors. There's nothing wrong with a metal detector. It's just something we're not used to because we've lived in the land of Oz. She'll be right. She'll be right doesn't work anymore and we know it. So she'll be right doesn't work. Kids can get weapons. Kids are using weapons, and that's that. We cannot turn a blind eye to it. You don't want any of your family members stabbed. No parent sends their kids to school for 6 hours and have to fear that and feel sick in the guts to it, which is why homeschooling is going through the roof. So number 1, it's prevention, not panic. And it stops it at the school gate. It stops it there. Now you have a metal detector, no kid's going to bring their weaponry in. So you've stopped it, literally. And then what you've done is, if you're in a small school and you haven't got a metal detector, you've got a swipe. So, you can use that whenever you want. Any teacher can, because it's in the policy. That's what they need to do. The principal runs a school, public schools. They put it in their policy. And so they can do that. They can say, hey, stand still. We're just going to give a swipe, make sure you haven't got anything on you. And yes, it's my right for the safety of yourself and others. That they're easy to do too. And then they're not going to cost a lot of money either. So when we look at that, I remember when we had CCTV in schools. And I rang up the department and said, I want to put CCTV in my school. The damage to school is phenomenal and I'm sick and tired of it, because I was paying for it. And not the insurance company of the department at all. The school was paying for it, and we weren't a school with a lot of money. Anyway, they said, "No, you manage it yourself, Tracey. If you want CCTV cameras, you put them in." So I did, and so I instructed everyone in the school. This is what's happening. And I said, you'll see them there. Don't touch them because we can see you and whatnot. And they're there for safety, nothing else, for safety. And so it was a preventative. Of course, we had the renegades who had to test them and whatnot and climb the fences and get caught. And then I just call the police in and they'd do forensic search because they could see what the kids were wearing. We had photos of them at school wearing that stuff that day, sores on their legs, forensic, all sorts of qualities that showed us who was who in the zoo. And so, because they started wearing the masks and everything.
So metal detectors and CCTV cameras covering every inch of the playground and in every classroom, so that forensically, I'll use your word, it can be diagnosed as to exactly what happened to whom and when. So there's none of this he said, she said.
Correct.
Let me tell you a story, and you be aware of this. And it was a teacher that rang me when I was on the Triple M network, and he was a teacher that had been suspended indefinitely from a school in Bankstown in Sydney. And he had a student, and when I look at the Chris Lilly parody TV series of that boy Jonah from Tonga, and his insolent behaviour was kind of like that, except way more aggressive. And this kid came, and he was in a senior class, and he's come in with his chains, his baseball cap on backwards, his Adidas tracksuit top, he's put his feet up on the desk, and he's got his headphones on, and he's playing up. He's bored, obviously, and he's really playing up. The teacher, a male teacher, said, "You can take your hat off, you can take your headphones off, get your feet off the desk. I'm here to educate you." The student said, "Go and get effed." He said, "I beg your pardon, you heard me." And everyone's laughing, just like Jonah in Chris Lilly. And he said, "You take your headphones off, you take your baseball cap off, and you get your feet off the desk. Who's going to make me?" Now, if CCTV cameras were there, I think this would have been solved. The kid stands up. He's a big kid. He said, "Outside, who's going to make me?" The male teacher says, "You come with me," and the kid takes a swing. Yeah. He grabs the kid, controls him by putting him in a headlock. He said it was for my safety and the safety of the students, and drags him outside. The teacher was suspended and eventually sacked. And that problem child was allowed to stay in school.
Correct.
Now, I take my callers on face value, but that's the story he told me, and that was the story that ended up in the papers a couple of days later. Unbelievable.
And of course, that happens all the time, absolutely all the time. So in my schools, to cover our teachers, I would ask at the beginning of every year for six teachers to register as the safety personnel officers. So they were actually trained. I paid for it. The school paid for them to be trained how to prevent a student from assaulting another student. And so they were trained by police how to do it correctly from behind, to isolate them if they needed to. So if they're registered and on a roll, and I sent that to the department must accept it if that's what they do. So that's one of the problems with schools. They don't know any of this stuff, and so no one's trained. No one's trained to deal with a kid on ice. No one's trained to deal with a kid with a weapon. No one's trained in schools because they're educators. They're not combatants, and this is the problem. So one of the big things is we do have to look at how schools fund certain things now, and safety has to be at the top of the budget right at the beginning. So public schools always do their budgets at the end of the year, ready for the next year. They know how much is coming. It will come into the bank account somewhere at the beginning of January, end of January into February. And so they have to have that locked in. Everything, all their workforce planning, all their facilities planning, everything has to be done. So it's at that point in time, a principal makes two decisions. Number one, to smarten up their behaviour management plan and make sure every single child has a copy and has signed a contract. Every single child and parent must sign a contract. A lot of principals aren't doing that. Every child that enrolls must sign that contract. And the contract's simple English. So then you have the behaviour management that supports you, supports your team, and has it all there. So if anyone wants to come back at you, you've got something there, the school policy, right at the beginning. And then you have a look at, okay, how safe are my children in my school? I want to protect them. How safe are they? So you go and do a walk around the school with all your safety people. You've got a whole every school has a workplace health and safety committee. You go around the school and you look at everything, anything that could hurt a child or a teacher. And that's how you work your policy planning and everything, all your planning. It's strategically simple. It's a simple business thing, but probably never done in a lot of schools. I doubt many schools would bother doing it.
Okay.
And that's where you look at your purchases.
We're running out of time. I'm telling you this for nothing, Tracey Tully. I'm going to get you back on because there's so much more. We're going to have a part 2 with Tracey Tully in a couple of weeks, if that's okay with you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But let me just put this to you. What do you say to parents who say, I'm raising this child or 2 or 3 on my own. I'm a single mum or I'm a single dad. I'm working 2 jobs to make ends meet. I've tried and I cannot control my child. I don't know what they do at night time. I don't know what they're doing after school. They complain that there's way too much homework and yet I'm pressured that they've got to get off the couch and stop being sedentary. So I've got to look after sport. I've got to pay exorbitant sports fees, registration, insurance and all of that for them to participate in sport. I'm doing it all on my own and I've got a night job I've got to go to as well. I'm beat. I am absolutely beat. I don't know what to do.
Okay, yes. And then add to it that those parents have no one to babysit the kids at night and they can't afford it. So the kids babysit their own sibling.
And they've got their what do they call them? Latchkey kids?
Latchkey kids.
So they come home to an empty house.
Yes.
Because mum or dad are working their second job.
Correct.
Or flat out on their first job before they start driving Ubers or whatever, or clean. Yeah. And the kids are raising themselves.
Correct. And then the absenteeism actually goes across into the school day. So that scenario is absolutely spot on, and it's a huge population. So I'm very, very familiar with it. So familiar with it. So what happens with a parent that comes to me with that story? A number of things. Number one is, what can I do to help you? We have a conversation and I make sure my communication, I am listening, and I say to them, I'd like to record this so I don't miss anything. You will get a copy. Are you comfortable with that? No one ever said no. And then I would say to them, but I will take notes as well because this is serious stuff for me. And so number one, I would suggest, because I raised my kids virtually on my own as well. And ran a school and honestly, and then it was working with shearers and all sorts of other stuff. It was tough stuff. And so what I would do is say, number one, let's make life easy for your children at school. You're suffering financially. I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to go to the president of the PNC. It's not going to go through a committee meeting who the child is. I'm going to go to them, tell them your dilemma and see if they can provide a breakfast program for a number of kids, not just yours, a number of kids in the same boat. Done. Tick. And it was always done. Our PNCs were phenomenal. Number 2, lunch will be a problem. Don't sweat. You tell your kids that they don't have any lunch, they come to me because I've got a whole cupboard full of food here. And I also have slips I can give them to go down to the tuck shop. School pays for that. And we keep it between ourselves. Okay. So it's confidential for the sake of the child. The child doesn't feel, like they're different. And it worked. It worked brilliantly. And they'd come in and they'd have a yarn and they'd sip their poppers and eat their food and they'd have a yarn and off they'd go. And then they'd tell me all their problems and I could manage them as well. So they're the first 2 things. And then I'd say to mum, Okay, homework is a major issue for everyone. Let's just crash it down. Let's just smash it down to virtually nothing, because we don't need the kids to be doing that. We need them outside playing sport. That's what we need. So that's what I did.
And that can be expensive because we don't have backyards anymore. We don't have streets that we can play in. Yeah. And the world is unsafe.
Correct.
And so to play organised sport can be very, very costly.
Yes. And so we got on top of that. We did it at our school. So the kids stayed there. The kids stayed at school and they had after-school care, which I got funding for, and then they got fed. So as soon as school finished, they stayed there and they ate and they nourished themselves, they played, they had some time on the oval or in the library, whatever they needed, and then they would have organised sports. And I had these fantastic teachers that would do indoor soccer and all sorts of things for the kids. And then it got bigger and bigger because there were kids that didn't want to do all that physical sport. So we had chess. And these are really rough schools. Really rough schools. And we had big chess tournaments. The kids loved it. So it's looking outside the square, Luke. It's putting a different set of glasses on to look at the problems. They are all solvable. They are all solvable. And this is what gets in my craw, that people don't think. They don't want to think. But in all honesty, they don't understand it because they're not in it. And there are simple remedies for these. When we come back to the weapons, I've had lots of weapons in my schools. Big lockdowns. Wow. Massive lockdowns, and they're real lockdowns. So I made sure my kids understood what a lockdown was. And we didn't just have the random, let's do a lockdown. I'd say to the kids, every kid on school assembly, I'd say, we're going to have a practice run, and I'm going to be the perp. I'm going to be the perp, and I'm coming for you. You need to know when you hear someone running down the corridors, it's me. And then you do not leave your classrooms until a police officer releases you. Okay? Yeah, everyone understand that. So then when a couple of days later we'd hit the button and all the alarms would go off and the kids would go, bolt, because there was, we're going to have some fun doing this. So they did it, but they did it correctly because I do this a lot. And then I would belt along the classrooms and I'd bang on their doors and I'd say, you're all dead. I can see you inside. You're talking. You're finished. And run to the next one. And I'd do this. And then we made it a competition. Who can be the quietest? So then I'd talk to them. How do you stack your furniture in this classroom? How fast can you stack it to prevent anyone getting through those windows? Because all the schools have these stupid louvers. Anyone could get in. Anyone could throw a bloody rifle in there and pop off a whole class of kids. So we did all that. Then I put curtains up there. Anything I needed to do to protect the safety of my children, because one lockdown with weapons was enough for me to learn, don't put the kids at risk or the staff. So we would do these and you could hear them squealing when they could hear me banging down the thing and everything. The whole school would just go silent, absolutely silent. And I'd come on an assembly and say 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. That terrorist did not get you. And you have to keep doing it. You have to, because this is the world we live in, no matter where they are. So then they're out, grown up, and they're in a shopping centre, and something happens. Boom! Those kids know what to do. They know what to do. You go and seek cover because that's the world we live in, and it always has been. Actually, it's not just happening now. There's a bigger population. Weapons are easy to get to. All these kids in the regional areas, they shoot pigs, they shoot roos, and they knife pigs. They're athletic. Most of my kids ended up in the army because of that. I had to look at channeling them somewhere for their skills, and that's where they all went. And the Defence Force, ADF, loved my school. They reckon they had the highest applicants and successful applicants. And I still have those kids texting me, and one of them asked me for a reference yesterday up in the territory. So, this is real stuff that we can do, and we just have to think outside the square. There's nothing that can't be problem solved.
I tell you what, next time we talk...
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am, I should be saying. and I'm going to bring you an apple next time we have class. I'm going to ask you, I think we should talk, somebody's already sucking up. Yeah. How did the COVID shutdown and homeschooling affect kids? I'm going to ask you, do kids really need reams and piles of homework unless they're in year 11 and year 12? And I'm going to ask you, do kids really get a better education at an expensive private school?
Good questions.
And just how important is, and I'll go New South Wales here, the HSC. Mm-hmm. We have a massive tradie shortage in Australia. And there are lots of kids who feel frustrated at school because they're not academics, but they're maybe being pushed to go to university. Otherwise, they're seen as an embarrassment and a failure. And doing things with their hands, it's a gift. I'm hopeless. I can't hammer a nail straight. And I was shit at school too. So thank God radio came along. There's an old saying, radio giving ugly men a chance to get laid. But in all seriousness, I wonder, are we hell-bent on an academic career and a university career for our children where we should be looking at their gifts, their talents, their wants and their passions and channeling them so that they feel special, that they can't wait to put their feet on the bedroom floor every morning and feel as though they're contributing? And I wonder just how important is university? How about we look at those topics next time we talk?
Oh, I love it. And not just for your mainstream kids, but also for kids with disabilities.
You are fascinating. Jesus, I've enjoyed our chat. We're going to do it again. And I can't thank you enough. You've given us a lot of time. And I told you that the mantra is I don't tell people what to think, but I do love to give people something to think about. And you've given us a lot to think about.
Thank you so much, Luke. I'm really inspired by you, and more so today. These are the conversations that people need to hear. They must hear these conversations. They're really important for them to understand and to form their own opinions, but to support what needs to be done.
Tracey Tully, unbelievable. Tracey Tully.
Thank you.
Something, folks, to think about.
It's the Bonafide crew. Talking truth from the care. Stories from the black.
My very good friend Shane Oliver, chief economist with AMP, posed a really interesting question on his website. He asks the question, why have Australian living standards fallen? And how do we fix it? God, if we knew the answer to that, we'd all be laughing. He'd be Prime Minister. I then went on to read a really interesting article about Harry Triguboff, who is concerned about where we're going. He is the Meriton founder and managing director of Meriton. He's 93 years of age, and you can safely argue he's done pretty well. But he has slammed the indecision surrounding Australia's immigration strategy in an article that was published on the Meriton website. And he's urging the government to boost the numbers of people moving to the country, but in such a way that their coming here benefits us all. Now, we'll get to Harry Triguboff in just a second, but Shane Oliver, welcome back to the Bonafide podcast. Your question on your website is the question that we all want answered. Why have our living standards fallen? Why is the cost of living so high? What is inflation? And how do we fix it? Now, I know you've seen the Harry Triguboff article. I sent it to you. I also read something else really interesting, Shane Oliver, and that is another economist, and I won't say from where, but they said, if you are 30 years old today in Australia and you don't own your own home now at the age of 30 and you continue to rent, you'll never be able to retire. Your thoughts, your reflections.
Good Lord.
Good Lord, as Neil Diamond would have said on Hot August Night, yeah.
There's a lot in that. I think the simple answer to the question is that we've dropped the ball in the last 20-odd years, that Australia used to be a high-performing country. In fact, back at the latter part of last decade, The Economist magazine ran a cover story on Australia and said, Aussie rules, what can Australia teach the world, and referred to us as the wonder down under. Now, of course, that there's recently a book produced by Paul Kelly from The Australian, referring to Australian exceptionalism, and he looks at the coalition years that ran from 2013 to 2022, and he would argue that Australian exceptionalism, where we can do better than most other countries, was actually in the twilight zone at that point in time. It was actually in decline. Unfortunately, I think what happened was that we had a crisis back in the 1970s, when you and I were growing up. It seemed like a good enough time, but economically it was pretty bad. We had very high inflation, rising unemployment, very constrained economic growth. Then Hawke and Keating were elected. They realised this is not so good. We've got to do something about this. We then had a collapse in national income as our export prices fell. Keating appeared on the John Laws program, said if we don't do something
Banana
about
Republic.
This, we're going to be a banana republic. And then, of course, that was a period of intense economic reform, and it freed the economy up, freed businesses like Harry Triggerboff, to create wealth and jobs and incomes for Australians. And then, of course, those reforms were continued under Howard and Costello. And that combined led to very good growth in Australia, growth in our living standards that continued into last decade. But the reform agenda has now fallen, the wheels have fallen off, basically. It's become harder and harder to run a business. We constantly have shortages. Wage pressures are high, and they're just trying to keep up with prices. So it's like we're trying to chase our tail. Now, of course, there's lots of proximate reasons why living standards fallen. Prices have gone up more than wages. That's what's happened. Our real wages have gone backwards to the tune of 6% over the last 5 years.
But the other thing is we haven't addressed bracket creep, so you can be earning so much.
Bracket creep.
Sorry, go on.
That's another factor in there. Obviously, interest rates have gone up, and so those with a mortgage are paying more in mortgage payments than you were, say, 5 years ago. And you've got bracket creep. And that's a major, major problem that's seeing more and more ordinary Australians jump into higher tax brackets and pay a greater share of their income. We did get some tax cuts in the middle of 2024, but we're now on the way back up again as people jump into higher tax brackets and pay more and more tax. So all of those things are combined, but I think that the root cause of this is that our economy just doesn't operate as smoothly as it used to. It takes 50% longer to build a home or a unit than it did, say, 10 years ago. 10 years ago, economists like me were doing the crane count across Australian cities because there were so many cranes around. In fact, when you counted the number of cranes building apartments, we had more than in North America. At one point there. Now, you couldn't do that anymore because it just takes so long to get the approvals through.
Isn't that interesting? The crane count. The crane count, yeah.
It's gone. I mean, there's been some efforts by state governments to sort of ramp it up, and that's good, but we're a long way from where we were back then. That's a problem. You look at the budget changes. I think we need tax reform in Australia to get those top income tax, or get the tax rates down generally, push out the tax brackets, rely more on the GST. So therefore you're taxed if you spend, but if you don't spend, you don't pay all the tax. So there's lots of sensible things you can do there. We rely excessively on stamp duty. You buy a new home, you're up for what, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 bill just to get out of your old home and in your new one, let alone the real estate fees. So these things are ridiculous, and unfortunately we're not doing anything to fix them. The tax reform in the budget went down the rabbit hole of focusing on negative gearing and capital gains tax. Maybe those things were a little bit too generous. They could have been wound back, but because the changes were so huge, they've dominated the whole debate. But at the end of the day, it was really a tax hike and not real tax reform. People are still paying those high income tax rates. So I think these things are a bit disappointing. We've got too much government spending in the economy. If you're an Australian business in hospitality, say, you're competing with the government for jobs. A lot of jobs have been sucked up into the NDIS. The NDIS is a great program, but it's full of rorts and people getting it for whom it was never intended. But that has taken resources away from the private sector. So they're all the problems we need to fix. We need to deregulate. We need to fix up our tax system. Labour market regulations have become way too tight. It's too hard to hire. Companies don't want to hire people to the same degree, and it's often too hard to let them go when they're not performing. All these sorts of issues need to be addressed, along with the issue around immigration. I mean, that's a big one. We need to, as a nation...
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Harry Triggerboff. You've seen the article, and this was on the Meriton website, so anyone can go and have a look at it. He says this country must grow. It's too big to be left in its present state. To develop, we need more people, but we should be able to argue who comes. When they do come here, they mix very well with the local people. Mr. Triggerboff said the heart of the housing crisis was beating in New South Wales. Well, that's not necessarily true. He might be the boss of Meriton, but if young Australians are still finding it increasingly financially impossible to get into a home in Sydney, and yet we're seeing the auction rates, the clearance rates falling. So they're not selling, but they're being passed in at auction. Can you explain that?
Well, what's happening with the property market is a bit convoluted at present. We do have a shortage of property, and that's evident in rising rents. The rental vacancy rates are very low. But by the same token, whenever interest rates go up, home buyers go to the sidelines. You combine the high interest rates with uncertainty around the economy associated particularly with the the situation in the Middle East. We thought the war was over and now it's back on again. Those things aren't helping. And then, of course, in the midst of all of that, we get those tax changes. So investors who might have been thinking about buying property are now facing much lower after-tax rates of return. You can debate about whether that's a good thing or not, but obviously it's seen investors retreat to the sidelines. Those things, less owner-occupiers trading up, combined with less investors and low confidence, have all led to a fall in auction clearance rates. If you go back, say, middle of last year or around August, when there was peak rate cut optimism, the auction clearance rate was around 75%. Now it's sort of pushing around 50% or just a little bit below that. So that's what's happened. There's still a shortage of property out there, but buyers have sort of gone back into their cave, so to speak, and that's keeping auction clearance rates down. And in the meantime, of course, that then results in slower house prices. So house prices, Sydney, Melbourne have been falling for a while now. It looks like Brisbane is now starting to see lower prices. Adelaide looks to be stalling. And I think we're going in for a bit of a short-term property slump.
Okay, so if the investors are going back into their shell for the time being and houses up for auction are being passed in, and that's reflected in the auction clearance rates, which have been falling, shouldn't that make it easier for 30-year-olds? I'm using the age 30 because that was the one quoted. But doesn't that make it easier for younger Australians to get into a home if they're being passed in, there's a deal to be done? I'm not an economist. I'm a dumbass. So explain it.
No, it does. I mean, the government might say, well, this is actually good. We've got less investors out there. We've got property prices coming off the top. We've got the 5% low deposit scheme. So there's a bit of an opportunity there for first-home buyers to get in. So, yes, that group of people probably are thinking of getting in. I guess the flip side, though, is whenever I speak to millennials, they'll say, whoopie-doo, prices come 5% off the top, but they're already significantly overvalued. It's still very hard for us to get in unless we've got help from bank and mum and dad. So there is a bit of a constraint there. But in a big, broad sense, the other issue is, I should just mention, that if you've got less investors in the property market, the risk over time is that you've got a lower supply of rental property. So you may have made it easier for first-time buyers to get into the property market at present, and I think you probably have at the margin, but the risk is that renters may face higher rents down the track because there's less investors in the property market. You've probably still got 35% of households wanting to rent, but with the less investors in the market, there's going to be less investment or less rental property. So that is a bit of a risk longer term for the property market, and I think something the government underestimated.
Is it true what that economist said, that if you are 30 and are renting, you're going to make it harder and each day you wait, it's going to get harder and harder to get into the housing market and own, and if you rent and continuously rent for the rest of your working life, you'll never, ever be able to retire?
I wouldn't be quite that harsh, but I see where that economist, whoever they are, is coming from. My own philosophy is that, yes, you can rent for a little while and it gives you flexibility and so on, but ultimately it's dead money. You're better off trying to get into the property market in some way, because I think all the evidence shows that property ownership in Australia is one way to generate wealth over time. And if you're paying off your own property rather than paying off someone else's property, then that is a good thing to do, because it will mean that by the time you come to retire, you'll own your own property, and that gives you lots of flexibility in retirement. So my view would be you should try and find some way to get into the property market, but that doesn't suit everybody. Some people prefer to rent and don't like getting a commitment to one house and all the issues and costs that come with that. So bottom line is, I think it is better to try and get into the property market. And I mean, I managed to do it using rent vesting, the benefit of negative gearing. That's why I'm a little bit peeved that that's been totally removed as an option for young people. I mean, when I first met my girlfriend, now wife, we were at home with our parents, so we decided to buy a property, rental property, and that's how we got in. And then we managed to get the mortgage down on that, partly using the benefit of negative gearing, and that enabled us to trade up to another one and so on, and we eventually moved into it, which we now live in. So that worked out pretty well, and I think that's probably a good way to go. A couple of years renting is not a problem. You can work out what you really want, but ideally you should be aiming to try and get your own home.
Okay, last question, because you got to go to work at the Twin Towers at Circular Quay.
Well, they're very different looking towers.
I know they are, but let me ask you this.
Both have been rebuilt there.
The war between the United States, Israel and Iran, we thought that there was going to be peace, a ceasefire, and the Strait of Hormuz was going to open and everything was fine. It's all gone to shit at the moment.
Well, that's a bit of an understatement.
Yeah.
It's been worse than that.
So the Strait of Hormuz controls about 20% of the world's oil, which turns into petrol and diesel and gas. If the Strait of Hormuz is not opened soon, how is that going to affect Australia? And double barrel question, if it does become a prolonged problem and we have limited supply here in Australia and we're going to have problems getting it here, would it be a wise financial thing for the government to extend the fuel excise cut?
It's a good question. Like so far, share market doesn't seem too fast. I mean, it's come off a little bit, but not much. And US shares overnight were up. We'll probably be up today. So it's as if markets are taking it in their stride. And I think that's because of the experience since late February when the war started, where the world economy did not fall apart. We were able to run down reserves. Saudi Arabia was able to put more of its oil through this pipeline that goes from the Persian Gulf side of Saudi Arabia across to the Red Sea, so they can send 7 million barrels per day through that pipeline, and the United Arab Emirates have a pipeline that goes out to the Gulf of Oman, and that sends another 2 million barrels. These diversions have been put in place, but it still leaves a hit to global oil supply, that 20% you referred to. We're still absent about 13%, which can't be diverted. And gas, which comes from Qatar, if anyone's gone with Qatar Airlines to Doha on the way to Europe or somewhere, that's a major gas producer, and its gas is basically locked in.
But we produce our own gas and we sell it.
We do. We benefit in that sense. But the gas situation globally is not so good.
Sure.
For us, we get paid more, but not so good globally. The problem for us is oil and petrol and diesel. So far, we've managed to get by globally is because there's those diversions in place, and we're able to run down global oil reserve. There is a limit to how much you can do that. So that's the real issue here. I think the markets are assuming there'll be some sort of solution. Trump will do another taco. They'll talk again. They'll back down. We've heard that one before. Every second day, Trump, once the share market falls, he gets nervous and says, they're talking to us, they want to do a deal, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like a broken record, and then it doesn't happen. So that's certainly a risk. The longer this goes on, the bigger the risk to the economy. So far, we can get by for a while, but yes, there is a risk to the economy if it's not solved.
So to answer the second part of my question, should the government extend a cut in the fuel excise to help Australians out?
Well, as a motorist would say, yes. Most motorists would say yes, they should extend it because it's currently due to expire on August the 2nd. As an economist, I would say no, don't extend it. If you want to help low-income earners who are struggling with their fuel bill, there's a better way to do it. Checks in the mail, for example. If you want to help the transport industry, there's also a better way to do it to make the fuel tax cut more targeted. So I'd probably go down that route, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if the government does extend it and leaves in place that 16 cents a litre cut that we're seeing in present and extends it beyond August, maybe to September or October. The reality is petrol prices have gone up again. You and I driving around on the northern beaches of Sydney, for example, it doesn't seem too bad. It hasn't gone up that much, but prices have gone up a little bit. But the trouble is the world oil price has gone up about $15 a barrel, and normally that would imply something like 10 to 15 cents a litre added onto our petrol prices. Then you add that on to the 16 cent a litre halving in the fuel tax cut, then fuel prices could be heading up towards $1.70 something. We're currently, I think, around $1.60 or thereabouts. There are upside risks here on fuel prices for Australia. So far, not so bad. And we have managed to find sources of fuel globally, but there's a limit to how long this could go on, and that risk is still there. I should point out, though, the fuel reserves in Australia are in better shape than they were before the war started.
Yes, thank God.
So you got to give the government credit for that. And just there's one point you made about Harry Triguboff, which gets me really excited, and he is dead right. Too many Australians, we've concentrated too much in our big cities. We've let our regional cities go down, our regional centres go into decline. We should be allocating more people, not allocating, but should be encouraging more Australians to move to regional Australia. And obviously those regional towns themselves should be able to encouraged and ways put in place to help them build more homes. You need more tradies, so therefore when we import more people as immigrants, we need more tradies in the mix. But there are things you can do there. If we decentralised away from our big cities using a 10-year plan, for example, and imported more tradies in the mix, then I think we could overcome this housing shortage problem. But if we continue to concentrate people in the cities, we'll end up with overcrowding problems like you have in other places.
Okay, just one more thing on the fuel excise. That's a federal government decision. However, it's the states that still charge a GST on it. Maybe the states could say, well, maybe we'll ease up on the GST. We'll take... Is that...
Well, they could do that. They have eased up on a little bit because... Don't forget, the fuel excise cut was about 26 cents a litre. The states also agreed that they would cut another 6 cents a litre out because of the surprise rise in GST they were collecting as a result of higher fuel prices. So the total reduction did include some reduction in the GST. So it was about 6 cents a litre in the total. 26 cents a litre was the fuel excise cut. So at present, both of those have been halved. And so the total reduction is about 16 cents. But there is some GST cut in the mix of that. So the states already have done a little bit, and they would probably have to agree with the federal government to extend it.
I better let you get to work. I really appreciate your comments. Thank you for educating us again. And good Lord, we will catch up again soon. Shane Oliver.
Sounds good, Luke. I'll look forward to it.
Yeah, I always look forward to our chats, mate. Shane Oliver, chief economist with AMP, and his thoughts on where we're going and what is around the corner. It's a worry, isn't it? It is a worry. And you do wish, I mean, as a parent, I wish we could help them out with the bank of mum and dad, but I've sired 2, raised 4. Nikki's got 2, there's 6. And so because our finances, our house, well, I've got my super, but Nikki's claimed that, you can't help one without helping all the others. And so how do you spread yourself that thin if you've got more than one child? It's a worry, Shane, isn't it?
It certainly is. And yeah, we shouldn't have this situation where you have to rely on the bank of mum and dad because some people don't have a bank of mum and dad. And that's why I think it's inequitable. We've got ourselves into a silly pickle here. It's just depressing. When I grew up, I thought the problem in Australia, like in the 70s, the problem was unemployment, which was getting too high, and high inflation. In one stage, their inflation was 17%. I mean, totally ridiculous. Now, I think the real problem in Australia is housing affordability. I think if we can fix housing affordability and not have to rely on the bank of mum and dad, not that I don't want to help my kids, I'm just a little bit concerned that other parents who can't help their kids because they don't have the financial ability, are in a more difficult situation. So I think if we can fix that, then I think we could solve a lot of the angst that's gripping Australia at present. But it does come back to what we were talking about at the start. You've got to make it easier for businesses to do things. Unfortunately, governments often talk about that, but we need a little less conversation and a little more action, to borrow from Elvis Presley. Elvis, I love that song. A little more conversation.
That was released after he died, I think, because I remember. No. I'm
an Elvis fan. Look, I'm a big Elvis fan.
Okay, well
it's actually in
they
the film.
remixed it. They remixed it. They remixed it and re-released it. That's what I.
It was fantastic. I love that song. It was actually in a film called "Live a Little, Love a Little." Came out in 1968. One of the best songs from that film.
We do apologise.
Then it was remixed in about the year 2000. Actually, if you go on YouTube, there's this guy called Josh Wildfire.
Oh, here we go.
Who remixes Elvis songs, and he's done fantastic versions of A Little Less Conversation and Change of Habit, a whole bunch of songs, including Suspicious Minds.
Do you remember during the 80s, there was that fad on hooked on things? It was hooked on classics, hooked on Beatles, hooked on...
That's right. That was good.
And it had that terrible clapping. Please don't bring back hooked on. Do not bring back the hooked on classics party mix. Shane Oliver, I'll leave you with Crunchy Granola Sweet. Neil Diamond, live from
That's a good one.
The Greek Theatre. Good Lord. Shane Oliver, thank you so much. Goodbye.
Good Lord.
Welcome to a show called The Man Cave. Man Cave. With Bona on the mic, it's a good day. Good day. Adam McDonald and Kelsey too. Thomas behind the scenes, producing all the good.
Well, folks, it's time for another Man Cave, and the Vice Captain is with us, Adam McDonald from Evans Hastings. A very, very big welcome to you, my brother, from another mother.
Good to be back online with you, Skip. Kelsey.
Kelsey's with us, the millennial is with us, and have we got an interesting program ahead. It's very sad news, and I've discussed this with our movie man, Shane Adam Bassett, that we lost actor Sam Neill this week. He had cancer. We all thought that he'd beaten it. It was a rare blood disease. The papers today are saying that when Sam Neill was presented to St Vincent's Private Hospital last week, he actually had pneumonia as well. And when you're treating cancer, your immune system does get knocked around. But this wonderful man from New Zealand, a caring, sharing, charismatic class act, and most people know him from Jurassic Park, but were you a Sam or are you a Sam Neill fan? I'll go with you, Adam.
Yeah, I think he was one of the better ones. He had the range where he could play the good guy and the bad guy, play a really creepy bad guy. But yeah, one of the greats of the screen for sure.
Chose to live in New Zealand, had a farm. He was into sustainable farming, and he used to walk around his little town and he was treated like just anybody else. I think it's kind of a shame that most people knew him from Jurassic Park and that franchise, because there was a lot more to Sam Neill than Jurassic Park.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, his catalogue is massive. But, Jurassic Park was an absolutely huge hit. I'm still on the fence if dinosaurs really existed, but that's another conversation for another day.
Listen, just before we introduce our guest today, there is a segue, because Sam Neill was in the Robin Williams movie Bicentennial Man.
Yes, he was.
See what I did? Did you see what I did there?
The robot that comes to life.
Well, no, it was always a robot. It didn't come to life. It developed through AI, a personality.
Yeah, and feelings.
So
Interesting.
there's an interesting link to our next guest, which is coming up very soon here on The Man Cave. Now, Adam, dry July. How are you travelling, my friend?
Well, I'm going quite well, actually. It's 2 weeks today. That's 14 days today. I'm into it. I feel really good. Like I'm not overly missing it. I'm not, you change a couple of things. I don't go down the meat raffles on a Friday night and open a bottle of wine. So it's just these little things that you fill your time with. So yeah, feeling really good. I'm feeling really confident. I'm going to get to the end of it. No sweat at all.
Fantastic. And how do we help you? How do we support you?
So have a look on my Instagram page, What's It Honestly Worth? It's there. The team name is Decepticon. It's me and my partner, Kelly. Yeah, we're getting through it. Like we're going on bushwalks and shit like that, Like it's just you got to fill your time with other things rather than sitting behind a glass. It's great. Just talking about Sam Neill. We lost him to the big C word just now, and it's all for a good cause. So get involved. But while I'm on that, I did get a donation from a listener, Bradley Potts. He threw his hat in the ring, gave me $60. So good on you, Bradley. Appreciate it. It's not all about breaking the bank to get as much money in as it can. It's like just chip away at it. $20, whatever you can spare. And like I said, it's all for a good cause. And we've all been touched by these dirty words. So get involved.
Before we get to our special guest, I want between the three of us and our listeners to try and solve a problem that has gone viral on the internet. I don't know how many people are watching the World Cup. I actually watched Spain beat Belgium, and that was very exciting, 2-1.
Spain's going to win it, aren't they?
Well, you got Argentina and England.
Yeah, I think Spain. They're big. They're handsome. I think they've got it.
Anyway, this is what's called a viral World Cup moment, and it's left the internet demanding a woman to file for divorce, according to the headline. There is a clip of a couple arguing in the stands of the World Cup, and it's gone viral, leaving thousands wondering what the hell they're bickering about. In the video, which we'll show you now, which has been shared all around the world on TikTok and X and everywhere, a group of South African fans are seen dressed in team merchandise, waving flags in the stands. However, the mood quickly shifts when a woman appears to take issue with her partner. During the match against South Korea in Monterrey, Mexico, the woman glances over at the man next to her who is looking at his phone. She appears visibly bothered by either what is on screen or the fact that he's on his device, and she confronts him. Now, let's have a look at this and see if we can work out what the drama is. Is it because he's on his phone? Here it is. Let's go to it.
He's texting someone he shouldn't be. 100%.
Oh!
He's yelling at her.
Oh, dear.
He's gaslighting her.
She's not happy.
Have some more ice cream. What
I know
the hell?
exactly what's gone on there.
Okay, Kelsey, marriage guidance counsellor, what's going on?
He is texting someone he shouldn't be texting because
Exactly right.
Her attitude changes when she looks over and looks at the screen.
Yeah.
She's seen somebody, I'm not going to assume who he's texting, but whoever he's texting he shouldn't be. And then he proceeds to gaslight her and try and tell her something along the lines of, oh, no, I'm not texting them, or, oh, no, I didn't say that, or even though she saw it on the phone, and then he gets defensive because she's called him out for doing something he's not meant to do, and he just proceeds to gaslight her and make her feel like she's in the wrong. That's exactly what's happened.
The give up is he pockets the phone straight away. That's the give up. I'm with you 100%. Whether it's Scarlet Woman or his bookie or I don't know. I'm not going to throw any stones here, but he's messaging someone he should not be, or maybe not should not be at that stage when he's obviously at the football with his family.
And what was he eating with the spoon out of the brown cup?
And I don't know who the person next to him who he shares his spoon with, that's not his wife.
Might be his daughter.
Oh,
Didn't
bit old for
look like
that.
daughter.
But yeah, I think Kelsey's nailed it there. I think he's talking to someone he shouldn't be talking to.
Do you know what?
100%.
I've got a couple of questions. Number one, how do the cameras find these people and find these things when the cameras should be on the play? There they say, it's like the Coldplay kiss cam. How did the camera find this contretemps?
Because the cameras
everywhere.
Yeah, and there's a lot of downtime in football. Like there's a lot of downtime, injury time, and you get
hydration breaks.
Yeah, hydration breaks. You get tapped on the shoulder with a pinky finger, and you roll around on the floor like you've broken your back. All these times. So being a cameraman, it'd be quite funny. Like maybe they've got cameramen to say, you're the crowd guy.
Yes,
and you scan the crowd looking for these incidences and win wonderful things.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I reckon they've got so many cameras. They have dedicated crowd cameras to find, because they do it at Wimbledon.
Yeah.
In fact, you remember
and they do it at the NBA.
Do you remember the US Open Seinfeld where George is covering his face in ice cream foam?
When he's in up to his elbows.
Yeah, that's up to his elbows. Oh no, that was when Jerry was having a pick. That was yeah. No, that's right. And they find this clip, Kelsey. Just find this clip. So it's Seinfeld. George is at the US Open. I got a funny feeling this is when Marlee Matlin, the deaf actress, was she an umpire?
No, she was a ball person, was she?
No, she was an umpire. Kramer wanted to become a ball boy.
Oh, and he did.
Anyway, and it was at the US Open. And anyway, so the camera zooms in. There's George with chocolate fudge
at the concession stand.
Yes. At the concession stand, and because that was shown everywhere, his girlfriend dumps him.
There's George. Holy cow! It's a scorcher.
Folks, what was happening with that couple fighting at the World Cup? Has Kelsey nailed it? Share us your thoughts, and if you can read lips, I'd love to know what she said. It's like Coldplay Kiss Cam all over again. If you're in the crowd at a major event, you've got to be on your very best.
Your fair game. Yep.
Your fair game.
Don't bring your baggage to a ball game. You will get caught.
Oh, that's the saying for the week. That's the thought of the week.
There's a T-shirt in that.
Don't bring your baggage to a ball game. Now, Adam, before we go to our special guest, you've got some massive news.
I've got this. I've got a deceased estate that came through the auction rooms with a very good collection of high-end whiskey. Now, I've got a bottle here, and it's an Elijah Craig 18-year-old bourbon whiskey. It's from Kentucky. Now, the interesting thing about this is on the back of it, it's got a handwritten date, and it was barreled on the 21st of the 10th, 1976. Now, that is exactly 1 week after I was born.
You would never open it.
No, you would never open it. So that means in this would have been bottled in about 1994. But the interesting thing about this is in 1996, a huge storm ripped through the distillery. The distillery was in Bardstown, Kentucky. Now, in this fire, 7 historic houses were lost and 90,000 barrels of bourbon went up in the fire. 90,000 barrels. And at the time, that was 2% of the world's bourbon. Just think about that. The whole world, 2% of the whole world wiped out. So this bottle survived. It was 2 years before the fire ripped through. And I don't use this very often, but this, I believe, would be a one-off. I don't think you will find another bottle in this collection, in this condition, pre-fire, of Elijah Craig bourbon whiskey.
Is whiskey one of those alcohols that gets better with age?
Absolutely. So the longer it's aged, the better. So this age now is 50. Believe it or not, I'm turning 50 this year. This is a 50-year-old now bottle of bourbon. This would be an absolute wonderful, wonderful drop on ice. Just have it neat. That's all you need. And that's online at the moment. Finishes next Thursday. Evans Hastings Valuers and Auctioneers. Have a look.
Do you remember when I interviewed John Laws down at Otto that lunchtime? Here it is here. Anyway, we had a great chat, and in the mail, a couple of days later, came a bottle of John Laws Wild Turkey in a special bottle with a note saying he enjoyed our time together, and he gave me a bottle of, I call it my Lawsy bourbon, and it's on the Man Cave bar, and I cannot bring myself to ever open it. I just don't want to open it.
I mean, this is going up for sale. I'm going to have a shot at it. I don't think I've got enough bankroll to buy it, but if I buy it, this is something like I'd open when Wonder Boy has his first child or at his wedding, something like that. You know what I mean? No, but that's exactly 7 days it was barreled after I was born. So very interesting. But amongst that collection of whiskies, there's very early bottles of bourbon that has all been stored perfectly. It's probably the best high-end whiskey sale that I've ever come across. So have a look online at the moment, evanshastings.com.au.
I got a funny feeling that in order for bourbon to actually be called bourbon, it's like champagne. It has to come from the Champagne province. It has to be made in America, and it has to be made with corn, and it has to be in wooden barrels aged, I think, 8 years, is it?
8 years minimum.
Yeah.
And this was aged in cherry oak vats. So it's got that lovely rich colour. It's going to have that deep smoky taste. It's going to be a very, very good drop for anyone who's lucky enough to secure it.
Tennessee or Kentucky sipping whiskey.
I have this argument all the time with my marketing manager who edits the catalogues that I put up at how you spell whiskey, and it all depends where it comes from. So
Wait, how else do you spell whiskey?
Oh, well, because there's Scotch whiskey and there's American whiskey.
So some people spell it Whiskey, which is the American version. But then if you go over the pond to the UK,
Scotland,
they drop the E at the end. So SKY.
Oh,
yeah.
know that.
Scotch whiskey has to come from Scotland, and it's made with wheat. Is it or barley? Anyway, barley.
Yeah.
And American whiskey's made with corn.
Yeah.
And has to be in a wooden barrel.
If you are a bourbon or whiskey drinker, you will not find another collection like this. I think there's a shade over 50 lots. It's all from one vendor, all been stored beautifully and entrusted to us here at Evans Hastings Valuers and Auctioneers. That
bottle, what do you reckon? What do you reckon ballpark? What's it worth?
I'd be surprised if it got under $2,000. I found one online in the States and they were asking $5.5. There's some good Macallums. There's some good, Islay whiskies. It's a ball terror. Let's just put it that way.
I'll tell you a very quick story, and I'm not giving you six fish, but years ago I drove from Bathurst to Sydney for my father's 60th birthday, and they were waiting on me to arrive because when my dad turned 21, he was given a 21-year-old bottle of port. And he was going to open it on his 60th. So do the math. And I cannot tell you the brand. I don't know what it was, but it was a bottle of port given to him as a 21st present that was 21 years old back in the day.
Yeah.
And he had all the little glasses lined up on the table, and they were waiting for me to arrive. This bottle had been sealed. It was corked, but it had a wax. They
all do, yeah. Have the wax seal, yeah.
So I arrive. Everyone's pleased to see me, not because they're pleased to see me, because they can finally have a taste of Dad's port. He pours it into all the little decanters. It was pus. It was absolutely putrid. It had gone off, and it was so disappointing. Dad was so disappointed.
Well, port usually is. Port's very hard to keep unless it's on its side and it's cellared in a dark, cool place. It's very hard to keep.
Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that one in. Very disappointing. Okay, now, did you ever think it was possible for you to one day have a Robin Williams Bicentennial Man robot in your home at your disposal? The future is here, folks. So, Vice Captain, we have a special guest, or we try to have a special guest every man cave. And I've got to tell you about our guest today, who is an interesting character. Now, I met Adrian Tyson at Channel 7 when I was doing Sunrise. And he had a wagon full of robots. And in fact, Kelsey posted a picture of me and one of the robots. We were doing a high five. And I thought, I've got to get this bloke on the Man Cave. The Vice Captain and Kelsey will love this story. Have we all seen that movie with Robin Williams? It's called Bicentennial Man, where Robin Williams is a robot that this wealthy family bought. Sam Neill was the father in the movie. And they buy this robot, and basically it's a companion robot that acts as a butler as well. And it develops and develops, but doesn't grow old. And he watches 3 generations of this family grow up. It's poignant. It's a bit sad, but it made you think. And the robot kind of looks a bit like Adrian's robots. Now, Adrian Tyson is from Neuronext.ai. Neuronext Robotics. And I thought, Vice Captain and Kelsey, why don't we get him on and see what these robots can do and what the future is? So can we please have a very warm...
He loves this button. I never should have shown Luke this button.
I love this button. I love this button. Adrian Tyson from Neuronext AI Robotics. Welcome to the Man Cave.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you, Adrian.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start, but Brother Adam, you're going to want to take over, I know, because this is going to fascinate you and Kelsey. Robotics. We can see in the background one of the stars of the show. What's its name, and where are we with robotics?
Yeah, so the robot that we have here over my shoulder is the Agibot X2 Ultra. And it's kind of...
I thought so.
Yeah, its kind of factory name is called Lumi. So we'll be able to get that working shortly. And robotics is really accelerating at the moment. So I think that all of us have seen robots on the news for decades, right? And we saw Asimo from Honda. We saw quite a few sort of robots, early Boston Dynamics things, going back sort of 30 years, but they never showed up. They never kind of left those test facilities or the university labs. But now they are showing up. And so it's really the application of artificial intelligence to the robotics engineering that has made those huge leaps forward that we're seeing now. And so it's still early days, kind of limited to the entertainment use case, but that is rapidly evolving. And we've already delivered a humanoid in Australia for a manufacturing use case in Queensland already. So that's just starting.
I mentioned the movie Bicentennial Man for a reason. And when I met you, Adrian, at Channel 7, that was the first thing I mentioned. And you said, yes. I everyone talks about Bicentennial Man because that was kind of a peek into the future, wasn't it?
Yes, very much so. And that kind of home companion or home looking after the cooking and cleaning in our house is really...
I think they call him an appliance.
An appliance, that's right. Yeah, that's kind of the main game for most of these manufacturers. I mean, working in factories and that kind of stuff, the volume is high, but it's not anywhere near as high as a PC in every home, like Bill Gates said in the 70s would happen. That's where I think a lot of the research and everything is really focused on, if we can get a robot that's kind of in that $10,000 to $20,000 range that can cook and clean in your house is potentially the biggest industry of all time.
Oh, you watch Dyson will make one any minute. Because I remember Adam, Vice Captain, Kelsey won't know what we're talking about. And for those who can visually see today's podcast, here's a little look at a robot every household wanted back in the day. And I'm talking about Rosie, the robot from the Jetsons, who actually knew her place because she wore an apron. Have a look.
I am Rosie.
Rosie.
Beep, beep.
Do you remember that?
It's interesting the Jetsons, where that was set so far in the future when everyone was flying around in spaceships and there was traffic jams in the sky.
I'm still waiting.
We've gone totally the opposite way, and we're digging underground, and everyone's in traffic jams underground. It's totally the opposite thing than what the Jetsons projected.
But the Jetsons had Zoom telephone calls. They had big screen TVs.
Yep.
But we still are waiting for the little bubble aircraft to take us to work.
Well, the Xpeng or Xiaopeng flying cars are out there.
What? Just excuse the pun. Whereabouts is Australia in the robotics race? Like compared to the rest of the world, are we competitors?
No, these robots are largely going to be imported from overseas. There is one manufacturer in Australia which is called Andromeda in Melbourne. They have a humanoid called the Abby, and Abby is specifically built really for aged care applications and kind of that kind of friendly, kind of largely aged care applications. So Abby is like it looks like a humanoid. It's very colorful. It's an incredible looking robot, very friendly in terms of its kind of low height. It doesn't walk, but it's a rolling kind of robot, but it is a humanoid. And so they are a company that is really kicking goals, and that can be a big market going forward as well. So that's our only humanoid manufacturer that I'm aware of in Australian market. But everything else is coming in from overseas.
With the rolling robot, I just have these. I used to have this argument with Wonderboy all the time because he's a huge Doctor Who fan. Like if the Dalek was after me, I'd just walk upstairs.
Stairs, that's right. Yeah.
And they're shot. So just my concern with robotics, especially in aged care, what if something goes wrong? Like, is there a plug you can unplug or a switch you can shut it down? Like, it's a bit nerve-wracking to me.
Yeah. What happens if it takes over the spaceship like HAL did in Space Odyssey in 1968?
That's right. Yeah, that's an AI question more than a robotics question.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's right. That's the thing. And with the robotics, I noticed that with the ones like this particular one back here, like when you set a series of dance moves in motion, the robot is going to continue and do those until that set is finished. If you get in the way, it's going to bump into you and stuff like that. So there is the ability to kind of physically intervene and stop it. There are some kill switches where you can press them, but they always require a secondary press because it will make the robot fall. So there are ways to turn them off. But the thing about the aged care one is that it's not the kind of robot that could go and injure someone or something like that. It's very much a slow moving, and then it just kind of is interaction, and the shape of it is what makes it kind of good for interaction. So I noticed a lot of the new robots are coming with quite soft furnishings as well. So this robot behind me has like the white rubber kind of exterior, which is quite soft. Older robots have got like the shiny metal, and they're quite hard and industrial.
Like a stormtrooper.
Like a stormtrooper.
Yes.
And then other ones that are coming to market, like the Neo, that almost has like fabric as the external. So there's a lot of different design kind of ways of thinking about how you want the robot to look and interact with people. So I noticed a trend towards softer furnishings for that kind of safety reason as well, I think.
Vice Captain, when you said what happens if the robot gets out of control, Adrian, my favourite robot was the robot from Lost in Space. And when he got out of control, there was a power pack on the side that Will Robinson used to pull out, and his arms and he'd flop down. You remember that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so the ability to just stop it is there, but it does take a couple of actions for the operator to do. If you've ever seen any of the videos from overseas where the robot has impacted particularly children, there's a few videos around where the silver Unitree robots have kind of run into or kicked into children. They are all operator error. The robot hasn't done anything outside of what it normally would do. What the operator has done is set those moves in motion without enough space around with people. So so when I operate my robotics, I have like literally a 5 by 6 meter space where every human is outside of that space and the robot's kind of dead center in the middle of it. So when I do run these dance moves or any kind of move, I know that I have a huge margin of error for safety, and that's what hasn't been happening overseas. So that's where I ensure that I keep people safe around the robotics.
With that space, what happens, the human error and the human encroaches in that space? Is there a shutdown mechanism where the robot will stop?
Yeah,
because it senses that there's something too close?
No, not at the moment. I'm not on any of the humanoids yet. However, the one behind me does have the hardware to do that, but the software is coming very, very soon.
There'd be a remote control, wouldn't there?
There is a remote control. Absolutely. They're all remote controlled at the moment. So in my case, there's a giant handle on the back of that robot. So, and it is on all of the robots. So if, say, for instance, it's running a dance program and then a child erroneously gets up and enters that space, I will just go and grab the robot and physically just move it and prevent it from impacting that
Are
student.
They heavy?
Yeah.
Are they heavy?
Yeah, 39 kilos for that one, which is not too bad. Like it's, sort of a teenager's kind of weight.
It could be a jockey. It could be a jockey as well.
What about battery life?
Yeah, so battery on this will last about 90 minutes on its own, but the beauty of this robot that's behind me is that I've got a MagSafe. You can probably see the wire coming off the back.
Yep.
I've got a MagSafe charger on that, so I can run that for I've run it for 9 to 10 hours a day without having to recharge. Without having to change the battery. So I just run the one battery. It can't do a dance and everything while it's on charge, but you just charge it for half an hour, go do some more dancing, and then come back and continually run.
So now can I ask,
What does it do?
Yeah,
What's
so
the purpose of it?
The purpose of the robot at the moment is very much that kind of, it's got interaction, so you can talk to the robot, which we'll do soon. You can train it. So one of the ways that this robot has already been working is we did a conference recently called Smart Energy at the ICC in Sydney, and a company called SIG Energy hired us. So SIG Energy makes solar panels and house batteries. We trained the robot by giving it all of their company data. We gave it the PDF brochures, we gave it their website, and then to do some fine control, we did these frequently asked questions. So we loaded the robot with a question that it might get and the exact answer that we want. So then we put the robot on the stand. People could just come up to it, talk to the robot, and it would tell them all about SIG Energy's product. And so it was able to talk about, all of the detail of the product and who is the local agent that they can buy the product from. And very importantly, when someone asked the robot, hey, please tell me about a competitor's solar panels, wouldn't do that. It said, hey, let's change the subject and talk about SIG Energy. So it was able to stay on brand for that customer, which is a very, very important feature. Then, so apart from the interaction, it can dance, is probably its main kind of thing at the moment. And so the use case of entertainment is where it's at the moment, and that's developing. So it's not quite, it's not going to cook and clean in our house yet, but the basics are there for it. So the robot behind me has just a rubber hand. So that can be changed for a full robotic hand. That's quite an expensive kind of option, but those robotic hands are at the moment, they're being used for some manufacturing tasks and things, but that is an emerging space. So once we've got a dexterous hand on the robot and then we can train it to do more things, it's going to be much more useful. But at the moment, it's kind of limited to the entertainment use case.
Yeah.
What's his name again?
Lumi.
Obviously, you've got to start somewhere, right? Like, that's how all technology works. You start somewhere and you keep building and building and building. Is the end goal for these to be companions or housekeepers, or, what's the end goal, and how far away are we from the end goal?
Like a butler in Bicentennial Man.
That's right. Yeah. So say, for instance, if you, you want to be able to come home at the end of the day and every piece of housework is done and your meal is on the table, that's been perfectly cooked, right? The dogs walk, everything's been done. And, the robot knows when you're due home because of, your car and all that kind of stuff's all talking together so that the meal is ready the second that you get home. That's the end goal. And the manufacturers tell us 3 to 5 years is where we're kind of at on that. That's close. That seems very close. And, they're quite bullish on that as well. And the speed of forward movement here is really rapid. So I got my first humanoid about 12 months ago, just a bit over, maybe 14 months ago. That robot now is just like very, very basic. It's it doesn't really do anything. It walks, it runs, it does some waving and a few things. And now the one behind me is a quantum leap from what that first robot was. And then I'm sure that we're going to see more and more incredible things coming very, very soon as well. So there's a lot of rapid change.
With AI and now robotics advancing so quickly, where does it stop? Is there ever going to be a place where I think that's enough?
Not sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I know a lot of my students, because I teach a lot about AI and robotics in high schools, and particularly related to careers, and I get that kind of question an awful lot. And it's hard to know. The thing, like for instance, like AI is already trained on basically the whole amount of human knowledge. Yeah. Like it's already trained on everything. Like there's even they've even built a robot to extract information from old art, like historical texts that the data is not on the internet. So they actually got this robot that has a giant, it comes down in the middle. It uses compressed air to turn the pages. And as it goes back out, it sucks the page to a V. And then as it reverses, it does a bright light and scans the pages and outputs that to a PDF. So if you've got human knowledge that's held in these old libraries around the world that's not on the internet, they're extracting that from those old texts.
This is very interesting because I went and had a look at an estate a while ago, and the deceased was a professor of pre-1700 Japanese politics.
Right.
And she had a whole room full of handwritten notes, and her brother who was looking after the estate went to the university and said, look, I've got all this information. Do you want it? They said, if it's not on a PDF, we don't want it.
Yeah.
And so literally they skipped all that information. This is a lifetime of study and research, and it's all gone. So I think implications like that are absolutely fantastic. But will there be surgeons? Will there be doctors? Will there be
Yeah, so a great example of this is radiology. So back in 2016, they call him the godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, who kind of invented the modern AI, as well as a couple of others. He said, he made a prediction that we wouldn't need radiologists into the future because of AI. And what has happened is the exact opposite. So it's very interesting. So there's a company in Sydney called Harrison AI, and they actually lead the world in AI for radiology. Now, what it has done is actually taken radiology from this tiny little specialty that you can't even access in every hospital in New South Wales to something that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the demand for radiologists is getting bigger and bigger. And we're actually training more of them now than we ever have in the past. The problem with a human radiologist, the lead time to train one is 14 years. 14 years. And so one of the great things about AI, and it's coming back to what you mentioned about the Japanese knowledge that has disappeared, is that if you think about, a radiologist and it takes 14 years to train one, and then your family member needs a scan. You don't want that brand new graduate to make that judgment. You want a 40-year veteran to make that judgment. You would all agree, right? We want the experienced radiologist to make the call. And so you think about that knowledge that person has built up through experience and all of their training. And of course, they try and pass that on to any students that's working with them, but they retire and they pass away, and that quantum of knowledge disappears from the world, right?
What about neurosurgery?
Well, that's kind of different because that's like, the dexterity of the hand, but robotics are getting involved in that as well. But the thing about AI that's incredible is that, so with radiology, thousands and thousands of radiologists have helped train this system. So you've got AI has captured all of these human knowledge and doesn't let it go. It doesn't retire and disappear, and that person's incredible knowledge has gone from the world. It's retained, and it just gets better and better and better with more and more experience that it goes on. So now the thing that happens with this AI is that it never works. It doesn't work on its own. It works in league with a doctor. So the research shows that a doctor on their own performs great. An AI on its own performs great as well, but combined, they perform better. And so it's a tool that the human uses to perform better. So one of the great examples...
like Voltron.
Yeah, so Harrison AI, they find they do a lot of work with the NHS in the UK. And they find that when a brand new doctor starts using their tool, and there's a lot of skepticism, of course, there's people say this is going to take our jobs and stuff like that. That's not happening. It's actually making more jobs in that field. But a doctor might look at a chest x-ray. The doctor says, I see there's no finding. And the AI says, hang on, we think there maybe is something there for, potential early stage lung cancer. And so then the doctor said, well, okay, I can't visualize that in the data, but I'm going to now order a CT scan to follow up. And there it is, early stage lung cancer. And so that blows the mind of the doctor, right? They say that's something and so that then allows treatment very, very early on. And they've actually gone back, and some of their research was, well, here's a person with, say, stage 3 lung cancer. Let's go back to a scan that was done a few years ago. And the doctor was cleared, it was okay, and the AI can say, no, we see a problem in that. So it's a tool that the human doctor can utilize to then assist. But it's actually, many parts of the world have no access to radiology. The two brothers who created Harrison AI, they're originally from Vietnam. And so there was an area in Vietnam that had, it's an island. I can't remember the exact name of the island, but it was an island that quite a reasonable population who struggled to recruit a radiologist, as we do in Western New South Wales and regional places. It happens everywhere. So they couldn't recruit a radiologist. So this population had no access to quality radiology. So these guys built a chest x-ray machine with their AI that's on board. So they don't need to rely on the internet. They just need power. And then people could have a chest x-ray in this remote island, and they had access to the world's greatest radiological minds. And so the AI system could say, well, this person needs to be medevaced to the capital city immediately. well, this person can be seen by a doctor within 2 or 3 days and triage people that way. So this population that previously had no access to radiology and then all of the implications of have not been able to access good health care now have access to that. So that has created, more business for radiology in that area. So that's an example of how this is a tool that, good clinicians can utilize to assist them. It's not out there replacing radiologists. And one example of this that I make to my students is years ago, my daughter, she fell on a trampoline and she injured her ankle. And we took her to the local hospital, which for us was just outside Sydney, a hospital at Camden. They didn't have a radiologist there at the time. And the scan had to go to the trained doctor at Liverpool Hospital for them to review. And that was like a 4 or 5 hour delay, which no complaints from us. But we're taking up resource. We're in a bed at the hospital and there's resource being wasted effectively from us being there. We had to wait. The doctor came back and said, the radiologist at Liverpool said, hey, that's a growth plate. You don't need to worry. She can go home in a moon boot because she's probably injured her tendons or whatever. And we're away to go. But the point was that there was no radiology available at that hospital in New South Wales at that time. This was, several years ago. This can help with that kind of triage, low level kind of stuff as well.
Let's get to this humanoid behind you because he's giving me the death stare. In fact,
it's giving you the stink eye.
It's giving me the stink eye, all right. So, Adrian, Tyson, let's have a look at this. And Kelsey's dying to get it to do some things.
Okay.
What do you want to start? We'll start with something basic. What are we going to do?
So first of all,
and does he take requests from the crowd here?
First of all, I'm just going to get him back on the app, and I might just bring him a little bit further forward.
Oh,
we can bring him over here.
Oh, that's so crazy!
Okay.
Friendly head pat detected. Battery plus 100%.
I don't know. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Good. Excellent. So, hello, Lumi.
Friendly head pat detected. Battery plus 100%.
Hello, Lumi.
Must be a teenager that doesn't listen.
Yeah. It's on social media.
Wireless mic's built-in mic in position. Time to get to work.
Hello, Lumi. Tell me what you see.
You're in a video call, sipping Coke.
Oh
Introduce
my God,
yourself.
So crazy.
What?
I am Agibot X2, a rising star of AI. And a
Yes, you
silicone-based youth, making some buzz in the tech world. My scope of operation includes jobs such as exhibitions, guided tours, scenic spot tours, commercial events,
Oh my God.
and celebrations. At these jobs, I can do things like chatting with everyone, playing games, doing actions. I can also act as a guide for everyone, provide explanations, welcome guests, and other such services.
When it moves, it freaks me out.
I know.
Hey, Lumi, how old are you?
I was born in March 2025 and come from the AGI bot in Shanghai.
So that's some of the interaction that we can do with the robot. Would you like to see some moves?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yes.
Give a gentle smile and let's take a photo together. Countdown from 10, 10, 9, 8, 7,
Come on, Kelsey.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Be careful. I'm putting my hand back.
Why is the voice still a robotic voice?
Yeah.
Can't have like a human voice?
Well, yes, that's something that's coming with software updates as well. So we haven't got that yet, but that's something that should be coming. Okay, so I'm just going to unplug it.
It's wild, man.
And we might just take him back a little bit.
Oh, geez.
Wow. My God. That's
Okay.
crazy.
So-
I want one.
Now, what we might do is one of the cool dances. And this is just a good way to see the kind of movement and movement control that they have.
Get him to dance like Elaine.
No. Oh, it looks like a real human. This is freaking me out. That is actually crazy.
Don't stop. What the hell are we watching? Does it do Nutbush City Limits?
Oh!
Yes.
He's doing the robot.
He's doing a
robot. He's doing a hymn.
Okay,
Hands up,
so that's
Numi.
an example of the moves.
Claps for Numi.
Wow.
Wow.
Hey, Adrian, tell me, does he do the moonwalk?
No, not the moonwalk yet, no.
So how do you actually, those movements, how does he actually learn them? Is it programmed into him or how does it, how do you get
like a human movement, like learn how to put that in code and then put it in a robot.
Yeah, so the manufacturer has an app called Linkcraft, and so we could actually, say for instance, I wanted to get the robot to do a brand new dance that I'd created. So I can video myself doing a brand new dance. You upload it to the Linkcraft app. They then build a model and they deploy it to the robot, and then it can pretty well copy your dance.
So it's potentially Lumi can dance like Elaine from Seinfeld.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. If you trained it on that. So
I'm done. I want one.
That particular dance is a pre-packaged one that comes from the factory, right?
Sure.
So but that's how they train them, is they effectively use AI to create what's called human pose estimation. So the video does like the follows your arm and your movements, and then they can build a model for that to deploy onto the robot.
And it moves scarily similar to a human. And I think that must be a challenge with like robotics and AI and all this type of stuff, is that the uncanny valley, right?
Yeah.
People get turned off by things that act like a human but look slightly not like a human.
That's right.
Is that something that you have to think about when you're like doing this?
Yeah, it's definitely you get that reaction sometimes from people. Particularly, I find that the dogs freak people out. The dog robots freak people out because of their movement is quite accurate, I suppose.
Yeah.
But the humanoids, it's definitely something that people are shocked when they see it. They people who haven't seen them in real life before can be very surprised by this kind of thing. So it definitely does happen. And now what we're seeing coming out of China is these robots that like are just superhuman looking, like in terms of
I don't like that.
Rubber
I
face
want them
and
to
stuff like
stay
that.
looking like a robot, but like do human things, but like keep it looking like a robot. You know, I like its little its light eyes. You know, I'm like, I like that. I think you're a friend.
Let's try some different expressions just quickly while I'm talking to you.
Expressions.
So let's see those.
Bring him up closer.
Yeah, I'll bring him up closer for that.
Lumi, come here. Good boy. Oh, Jesus.
So there's a little game playing on his face. We'll do this one is bored.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We've got,
seen that before.
I've seen Kelsey do that.
This one is alert.
During the podcast.
Exactly.
Happy.
Scared.
Then there's super happy.
Kawaii.
There's sad.
Oh, no, that actually makes me sad.
Furious.
Yeah.
Angry. And this one is called awe, but it's almost like a little game there.
That can become addictive.
This one says charging. And sympathetic.
Oh.
So you can control a few of those kind of things on the robot as well.
Can it do Tai Chi?
Absolutely, yes. Let's go back here.
Oh, Jesus.
This is freaking me out, Kelsey.
Okay.
I think we just need to get used to it.
Tai Chi.
Or Tai Chi is like when they go.
It's like a ninja.
So these guys could be instructors, like yoga instructors or Tai Chi instructors.
Look at the movement.
I reckon we're going to be going to gym classes led by these guys soon.
So that's a very interesting thing in the sports world. They could be like boxing trainers holding the pads.
Yeah,
that's right.
You know, there's all sorts of stuff. Wonder Boy love that.
Do you know what? At Vice Captain, they could be crash test dummies that actually get the steering wheel and save themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh,
one of the incredible things that you may want to see is how the robot can get up off the ground itself.
Oh, okay.
Would you like to see that? There's two ways. There's a laying on the back and laying on the face, and both are very interesting. So what I'll do is I'll just jump off the headphones and I'll go and just do that so you can see it.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Adam, will these become collectibles one day?
They've got to be. I mean, it's like anything. Early ones like Lumi, in 40 years, they're gonna be collectible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my God. Oh, poor guy.
It looks like someone on
Switch to zero torque mode. Robot joints have been unloaded.
Oh my God.
Get fucked.
Oh. Slightly nightmare fuelish, but fine.
Switch to damping mode. Robot joints have been unloaded. Switch to zero torque mode. Robot joints have been unloaded.
It's alive.
Oh my God.
Oh my
So
God.
that's how you get the robot up and down off the ground.
What what's Lumi worth? Today's
Lumi,
value.
That is a $97,000 robot.
Wow.
What will, like, it's hard to tell because obviously the tech in these things is like, quite expensive to make. Will it be like phones where, they used to be very expensive and then they became to a price point where they were accessible to everyone?
Like widescreen TVs were 40,000 at one point. And they got cheap very quickly, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what's predicted, and for sure that's what we're seeing with this. So a lot of the expense, particularly with this robot, is it has an NVIDIA Orin on board, which is a very expensive GPU for running the AI tasks and for secondary development and things like that. So that's one of the big things. And they also say that a huge chunk of the costs of robots, up to 70%, is the actuators to run obviously the motors for all of the joints and stuff like that. So that's a big part of it. So as more and more gets built, like this manufacturer has made about 15,000 robots, a mix of these and some other of their models as well. So they're starting to ramp up. There's a lot of push for more manufacturing. So that will drive the price down in the future as well, hopefully.
Do you think one day we'll see an army of them? Would they replace soldiers like Terminator, like we saw in the Arnold Schwarzenegger?
I think so, yes. And I know that
carrying weapons.
Yeah,
Maybe.
for sure. And
You already have drones.
You already have drones. Like as the point's been made that in the Ukraine sort of conflict has shown that drone warfare is kind of everything at the moment where it's at. It's very difficult for anyone to pop their head up safely anywhere.
Moving forward, so you think maybe in 15 years you're going to be able to duck down to Aldi and pick up a robot from the central aisle? Like that's how affordable they're going to be?
I believe that you're going to be able to duck down to several retailers within 6 months and pick up a robot.
Wow.
A very small humanoid. I know.
Wow. I was blown away with the robotic vacuum cleaner that used to. What are they?
The Roomba.
Yeah. And that's a great point because when I'm talking to young people about robotics and I ask them, how many of your families own a robot vacuum? And, it's probably 30% put their hand up. And I say, now, how many jobs can that robot do for you? Of course, it's one job. That's it. The point of the humanoid is that, the whole world is engineered for our shape. Every tool that we've made is for our shape. One purpose, one use robots. You can optimize a robot for that task, like the robot vacuum. But the point of the humanoid is it should be able to, once it's more versatile, go into our world and do many, many tasks with the one robot. That's the concept. And because a lot of people say, well, why would you build a human-shaped robot? Well, it's because it can go anywhere and do anything with our tools that we've already made for us, whereas purpose-built robots are going to be optimized for one task, for sure, but you don't want to have to buy 19 robots for 19 jobs around your house.
Yeah, sure.
That's the big idea.
Wow.
It's not there yet, but it's getting there.
It's fascinating. It's a bit scary. And as Adam just said, the future is here. And imagine going down to Aldi, hour 3, and picking up a
Numi.
And you don't have to pay them or feed them.
There's a really small humanoid under 1 meter tall that's coming that I think that you may be able, not Aldi maybe, but you may be able to pick up in the future. Very soon future, less than 12 months. Yeah.
Can we get Numi to say goodbye and wave goodbye? And
absolutely.
Are the hands is the hands what's the word I'm looking for?
Dexterous.
No, they're not. No, they're not. No. Let me bring it a bit closer as well.
That's what I'd use it for.
Adrian Tyson from Neurons AI Robotics. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
No worries.
It's been so much fun. Can we say goodbye? What do we say? How do we say goodbye and get a wave? Oh,
Nanu.
Nanu. Live long and Oh, hang on.
You know what you're talking about. I can't do it.
Live long and prosper.
It's tricky. That's what Mr. Spock used to say.
That's it.
Adrian, can we have a round of applause?
Yes. Thank you so much, Adrian.
Worries. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Adrian Tyson, Neuronext.ai Robotics. Folks, the future is here.
And it's cute.
Vice Captain, thank you for another Man Cave. What did you make of all of that?
you know, as I said, I think the idea I had in my head comes from the Jetsons, and we're moving away from it. You know, to have a robot like people have a bloody vacuum cleaner, it blows my mind. I'm not convinced. I'm a bit scared of AI and things taking over, but it's going to be what it's going to be. It can be an exciting time.
Vice Captain, you've got some exciting news. You're going to have a purpose-made podcast studio up and running soon.
Yes, the media room, we're calling it. It's gonna we're almost finished it. I'm doing the second coat of paint today. The microphones, everything's getting installed. It's gonna look just like yours, Lukey. It's gonna have my advertising in the background. The boom mic is gonna all be good. So hopefully next week it should be up and running.
We can't wait.
Get rid of this shit background with all the boxes.
And we've got a very special guest lined up for the next Man Cave, and I did allude to this on Facebook yesterday, but I've got some massive news, but I can't say anything just yet. Kelsey, is that all I can say?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Oh, what a tease.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for listening to episode 125 of the Bonafide podcast. Me and the Millennial wish you well. We love you all. Please stay in touch. Please give us feedback. Anything that you've heard that you have a feeling about, we want to hear and listen and read your feedback. And if there's somebody that you'd like us to get on, we will do our very best to hunt them down and get them on the podcast. Remember, we'll see you at the Casino Truck Show coming up very, very soon. In the meantime, Kelsey, people in this world can only drive you mad if you give them the keys.
That was a good one.
Goodbye.
Bye.